sci-fi, mystery, romance, fantasy, horror, and much, much more on episode 28 of the Story and Critique Show. Welcome. Today, we're going to be doing some live readings and critiques from writers in the community. We have quite a range of story submissions today. So make sure that if you want feedback on your story, there we go, that you follow the brand new submission link. The submission form is posted in the chat and down in the YouTube description. So if you're needing help, whether you are on a first draft or a last draft, we will help you and get some great feedback to help you improve that story. All right, beautiful. And don't worry, if you're watching on the replay, we got you covered. After the stream ends, time codes will be added to the stream so that way you can get the most value and hop to the part of this stream that brings you the most help. All right, perfect. So we have that. So we're going to be getting right into it. We have a number of stories lined up, and it should be a lot of fun. Hey, what's up, John? welcome, my friend. Well, welcome. So we Awesome. So as you can see, I have the first story queued up here. Let's see, I'm going to be throwing this up. Beautiful. So I have the first critique guideline thrown up here, which is perfect. So when we think about the submission process, first off, how do you submit? Once again, it's down in the comments and the YouTube description if you want to get feedback on your story. Let's see, I can throw up the submission form here. Perfect. Here you go. So it's pretty simple. You can just go to the submission form guidelines and it walks you through what to expect, the submission requirements, and then just a number of miscellaneous questions. So that way we can help get you the feedback that you need. So it's definitely super easy, very straightforward. And then once you submit it, essentially it gets added to a queue of submissions, and we will queue them up based on the order I received them, or I will try to prioritize any of those who have paid a tip, who have tipped. I accept tips through the Buy Me a Coffee platform, or for first time submissions. So I really try to balance it up so that way we can continue to make it fresh for our community members. Hey, welcome, Doreen. Welcome. And then in terms of the critique itself. So when I start looking for the critique, what I'm looking for after I read it. So each one I'll do about 10 minutes of reading. And then after I get to the reading, I will focus on one of these key elements of writing, whether that's character development, world building, dialogue, plot, or structure. I really try to focus on what are some of the things that work really well, and then what are some of the opportunities. I think every story is doing some things well, and every story has some things that need to be improved, regardless of what state it's at. So I really try to focus on this to make it clear. But most importantly, if there's something that stands out to you, then drop a comment. Let us know. I guarantee you the author will be reading the comments, or probably in the comments, whether they're here on the stream or they'll be watching on the replay. So if there's something you like, drop a comment. If there's something that doesn't make sense or something you're like, hey, maybe that could be improved, also drop a comment. All feedback is good feedback, as long as we deliver it in a way that is clear and kind. All right, perfect. And then just as a side note, if you see me highlighting your story, no worries. It's neither a good nor a bad thing. It's a reminder for me to keep track of my thoughts so that way I know what I want to critique on when I get to the critique portion itself. All right, perfect. And I think that summarizes all of the guidelines. Beautiful. So what we're going to be doing is we'll be starting with short story scenes, a sci-fi mystery romance by Lorelei Chrisp. So Lorelei, if you're here in the chat, just say I, drop a comment. Let me pull this up and I will adjust the screen now. All right, perfect. So we got that. There we go. There's our critique guidelines, and then I got your story all set, Lorelei. Perfect. All right. So always so exciting. Hey, what's up, Masked? Welcome, welcome, my friend. And Lmae, welcome into the stream. And John, football already. Any good football today? You know, I've never been too much of a fan of sports personally, but I think one that we do watch is baseball. Is baseball one my family has always gone to? But I know football literally just started, so that means Sunday night footballs is probably a thing again. All right. Perfect. So, Lorelei, I got your story all queued up. It sounds like we got some scenes and excerpts from your story. And what did we have here? So, based off the submission, let me fix this here. All right. So, based off the submission of Lorelei's story, it looks like we had. I'm going to pull it up right now. Let's see. So these submissions are small scenes from my book. So it looks like these are little small excerpts. Now, for those of you who don't know, we read, I want to say we started earlier. We did the opening scene of it probably a couple months ago. I remember it being an action. I want to say it was like an action mystery type scene. So let's see what we can get into today. All right, Lorelei. So I got you all queued up. Perfect. And I am all set. I got my highlighter. Perfect. Casper. The rain poured outside my window as I stared into the trees, their green leaves all dripping with water. I watched the water form puddles in the gravel driveway. As I stood in the living room with little to no light inside, Jackson had long gone to sleep. His snores still filling the house, even over the dribble of the rain outside. Luna trotted to my side, nudging my fingers, and I reached down to scratch behind her pointed ears, not taking my eyes from the view. Everything was perfect. Dark figures appeared at the end of the driveway, carrying full trash bags and soaked hoodies. My hand reached for the 9mm on the table beside me, and I opened the front door. Standing on the porch, waiting for them to approach, Luna's hackles rose along her spine as she followed me, and her lips peeled back to reveal her teeth. Heel, sit, I commanded, and her demeanor shifted, sitting right beside my left foot, patiently waiting for further orders. The figures stumbled closer, and they grew smaller, the size of children. I tucked my gun into my waistband immediately, and I stepped down from the porch to help them. Casper! Amani's voice was faint, but I heard it nonetheless. I took the bags from her hands, and she hugged me fiercely as if I were her savior. Come inside, my ducky. I've got you. The nickname came out fluently, as if I had never left home at all. Like I hadn't been gone for 2 years, and that I was here with my little sister all along. 8 years younger than me. I'd missed 2 years. I wouldn't let that happen again. Amani rushed inside away from the rain, and I let the figure beside her pass me into the house, their hoods still up. What happened, Amani? I don't understand, I said quietly as I shut the door, placing the bags dripping with water beside it. Luna nudged at Amani's hands as she peeled off her jacket, and as her arms raised to remove her shirt, I watched the figure turn around so that their back force faced her. I yanked the hood from their face, revealing a boy who didn't look much older than her. His hair was short hair and jet black, and his eyes filled with fear, were two different colors, green and blue. His left eye was swollen and bruised, and his chin was bleeding from whatever fight he had gotten into. Who is this delinquent with you? Didn't I tell you to pick your friends wisely? Annoyance tainted my voice, and I looked back to her, wearing one of my shirts 3 times too big for her. He's not a delinquent, Cass. He saved me, Amani whispered, and my eyes caught on the bruises along her arms. My body moved on its own, ready to shelter hers, to inspect her wounds. But the boy grabbed my wrist, looking into my eyes with understanding. Why don't you get some rest, lass? We're safe now. His voice was deeper than I expected, and as he peeled away his jacket, his muscles bulged. The boy only had to be 15 at the least. My room My room is down the hall, the door is open, and you can use the bed. I played along, feeling the tension the boy's aura held. So thick, it felt like I was wading through water. Okay, good night, Cass. Good night, Matsy, she whispered, her voice fading in and out of nervousness and the sweetness I remembered. We both watched as she padded through the hallway and into my room, with Luna close behind, and shut the door. What is going on? Why do you both look so beaten? I searched for the word as he finally let go of my wrist to peel away his soaked shirt, another bruise at his ribs and blood along his chest. Are you hurt? So many questions swirled in my head, and yet he was so quiet, so calm, but his aura radiated fear and caution. Don't worry, it's not mine. He paused, and the questions grew into what I could only think of was hysteria. Her dad caught her trying to escape. I was outside her bedroom window just waiting for her, and I heard her scream and then shouting for him. I climbed the house up to the window and into her room, and I watched his face shift as he rewatched the memory in his head. Her lip was bleeding, and she was cowering away from him. I don't know what happened. I blacked out, and when I woke up, blood covered my hands. My face was throbbing, and we were running through the rain. Tears welled in his eyes, and my chest squeezed with grief for this poor boy. I remember seeing her in front of me when I came back, and she wouldn't let me carry the bags for her. I took his hands in my face, forcing him to look into my eyes. Take deep breaths, boy. In through your nose and out through your mouth, okay? Calm down. I kept my anger in check, but I knew the moment I sent him to bed, I would leave the house with nothing but gloves, a rain jacket, a ski mask, and a gutting knife. Thank you for saving my sister. You shouldn't feel ashamed for what you did. Whatever you did to him, he deserves it and more. You hear me, boy? He nodded at me, wiping the tears from his eyes with swollen hands. What's your name? I need to ask one last question. I needed to know the name of who saved my little sister. Matsu. He mumbled as I hugged him, his arms staying frozen at his sides. Well, Matsu, there's a guest bedroom. First door in the hall, change into some dry clothes and get some sleep. I told him as I pulled away and slipped on my military boots, feeling for the knife in my pocket. What are you doing? Matsu asked as I slipped on my raincoat and the gloves that rested in its pocket. Going to finish what you started. Prompt 5, Matsu. I lay tossing and turning along my mattress, the sheets ruffled and damp with sweat. It didn't seem to matter how desperately I wanted to sleep, because it never came. I sat up, eyeing the silhouette of my doorframe, with moonlight shining dimly into my bedroom through the window to my right. Unable to take it any longer, I get up, placing my hand against the wall to get a sense of my surroundings as I enter the hallway. My hand reaches the thermostat and then Amani's doorframe. I twist the handle and creak the door open quietly to see her curled up in bed. She stirs slightly, but doesn't awake as I reach her. Long black tendrils unfurl around her like a dark abyss, and her eyelashes cast dreamy shadows over her face. I find my fingers tracing hearts on her hand, admiring her as she sleeps. Matsu. A pleasurable sigh escapes her supple lips, and I flinch, afraid of her reaction. But her eyes are still closed, and her breathing, even like she's still sleeping. Her body twists and turns, and a small moan slips through her. Amani. I sigh her name as I get hard, and I find my hands fumbling with the hem of her shirt. I know she can't hear me, and I know she doesn't know what's happening, but now I know she feels the same. I love you. I breathe heavily into her hair as I kiss her neck. My hands shake with uncertainty as I lift the bottom of her shirt, seeing the pale exposed skin of her abdomen. I place my hand against her skin, reveling in the warmth of it as my lips meet hers. I groan as shivers cover my whole body, with my mouth trailing her neck, down to her collarbone, and I hesitate at her shirt, wanting so badly to remove it, to reveal her breasts underneath. Oh, I regain my composure, ashamed of my rashness. How eager I was to taste her. It doesn't take me long to notice her breathing has stopped, and any thoughts of pleasure escapes me. Amani? I shake her slightly. Normally, any movement like that would have awakened her already. I glance back at a sound behind me and then back again. Amani's clothes are torn and tattered. The smell of hot, rotting flesh fills my senses, making my eyes water. Gouges in her body expose her rib cage and her intestines, and her breasts are now visible, but my mind is far from the thought. Fear is gripping every part of my body as I inch closer. The smell wafts through the room, and I hunch over, unable to keep myself from vomiting all over the carpet. Getting up, my stomach aches, and I can't bear to look at it anymore. I turn for the door, prepared to sprint, but the door is gone, only solid walls. I watch as Amani climbs from the bed, bones and ligaments snapping and twisting as the weight of her figure rests on her brittle corpse. Her intestines begin spilling out as she takes a step closer. You killed me. Amani's voice is like sandpaper as she lurches from left to right with each step. No, my throat closes up and I can feel the sting of tears as the guilt crashes into me. Do you want me now, selfish boy? She continues to walk towards me as I simultaneously step back. My body bumps into the wall and I am left with nowhere else to go. She reaches me and I close my eyes with hot tears streaming down my face. Her bony fingers grab a hold of my face and her cold lips meet mine. I awake in bed screaming her name. Sweat drenches my sheets as if it's just rained, and I can hardly breathe as I reach for my dream log. The taste of rotting flesh still lingers in my mouth as my hands shake, scribbling across the paper. I barely notice the wet tears over my face as I remember that Amani is dead. I killed her. The guilt is a weight, crushing my whole body, and I let it wash over me, telling myself I deserve it and so much more. All right. So I think that is a good stopping point. All right. Beautiful. So, wow. First off, Lorelei, thank you so much. That was a really cool dream sequence, actually. That was a really, really cool dream sequence. Awesome. Really, really great work, my friend. So, as I look into here and I see what worked well, it looks like we have. So, I would say that I liked the character development. I would yeah, I would say the character development was really strong. I think I'm getting a sense of the plot, even though these were probably two separate sections out of order. So I feel like what's working right now is the character development and the plot. That I think I like that. I think there's moments I like the dialogue, but it needs to be refined. I actually think the biggest opportunity right now for this is probably the structure slash grammar portion of it. And I'll get into that. I'll get into that in just a second. But overall, it was really good. If you're here in the stream right now, what did you think about it? Drop a comment. I think that the nightmare scene really stood out to me, by the way. That nightmare scene was really clever. I thought we were about to go into like a romance, like this, like late at night, like hook up between the two of them, the way that he's kind of going in there. He's supposed to go on a mission and then he like happens across the room. And I thought that was an interesting direction. I'm like, okay, so clearly they have this romance thing on. But then there's a moment where it changes and then her body is suddenly like decaying. And I'm like, oh shit, it's probably a dream. And I thought that was cool because I wasn't expecting it to suddenly turn into this grotesque dream. That could be because we're reading an excerpt of it, but based on that specific section, that was really well done. So I thought that was actually super cool. I really enjoyed that, and that caught me by surprise. So I think that was really, really fun. All right, perfect. So let's hop back into the beginning of it. So I would say, let's see, things that worked out really, really well. So the rain poured. So I think my biggest recommendation for you, Lorelei, is I think for me the setup. I think, and this once again, this could be because we're doing excerpts out of order. So because we're doing excerpts out of order, you said these scenes are not connected in any way. There are individual scenes within my stories. Yep. So they're not connected, and that's fine. So I'm not going to speak to them in comparison to each other, but as just the standalone excerpts. So the first one where she's meeting them, let's see, and we have Casper, and she's meeting the two. It looks like the sister and the other one. So it's really interesting. I think the biggest challenge for me was, let's see, I would say the biggest challenge for me was probably the character setup for them. I Now this could have been because I was doing it as a live stream, but I think there was a couple moments where I just wasn't really clear on who was who. And I don't know if this was me, so I wanted to just go back through this and see if I missed anything. So we have here, so clearly Casper means this is the main character. We have Casper and Luna, the dog, which is fun. We have the fun dog. I would almost recommend let's give the dog a little bit of description. Like what type of dog do we have? If you've already done it before, no worries. I just want to know what type of breed we have here because people, readers love dogs. Give a little bit so that the reader can be like, oh, adorable dog at their side. Yeah, because I don't think you gave any indication of who the dog or what the dog looks like. Okay, down behind your pointers, not taking much from the perfect. And then so they automatically reach for 9 millimeter. And then I think if I recall, if I recall from the last reading, I think there's some type of like military. I think the characters. I remember Casper and Amani. I think they're some type of like military duo of some type. So I'm not surprised. Dark figures appeared at the end of the driveway carrying full trash bags. Is it night? The rain poured as I stared into the trees, the green leaves. I watched the water. I stood in the living room with little to no light inside. Jackson. I would say just so I think this would be the same thing in terms of the setup. We need to know like what time of day it is because I'm like, okay, so clearly is it night then? Because I know it's raining and the lights are off in the house, which is fine. But we see dark figures. So this makes me think it's night, but I would just set that up. The time of day. Is it midnight? The is it dawn? Is it because like if somebody's coming up at 3 in the morning, like that's going to be a different experience than somebody coming up at 10 p.m. at night. So I think that would make a little bit more sense why they're grabbing the 9 millimeter. Up in the front door, waiting for them. Luna's hackles. Yep, yep. This is lips, and her lips peeled back to reveal her teeth. Yep, so we have our female dog, Luna, which is great. I just want to know what type of dog she is. Heel sit, the figure stumbled closer. Yep, so that setup was fine, and then she tucks the gun away. Casper, Amani's voice was faint, but I heard it nonetheless. Yep, I took the bags from her hands, and she hugged me fiercely. So come inside, my ducky, I've got you. The nickname came out fluently as if I'd never left home at all. Like I hadn't been gone for 2 years and that I was here with my little sister all along. Okay, yep. So you have Amani, the sister, has literally just showed up. And I don't know why I was like getting lost for some reason on who was who. All right, so this is clearly Amani speaking. And then this is clearly Casper. Come inside, my ducky. I've got you. My duck. What an interesting nickname. What an interesting nickname. The nickname came out fluently, as if I'd never left home at all. Like I hadn't been gone for 2 years. Okay, so I think this is what confused me. So the nickname came out fluently as if I had never left home at all. So I think because right now what you've set up, if you set up Casper. So Casper's here welcoming Casper grabbed a gun originally, but now there's welcoming Amani and someone else. But then their point of come inside, my ducky. I've got you. The nickname came out fluently as if I'd never left home at all. But isn't Casper's in a home though right now? So was this the home that Casper ran away to? Like I hadn't been gone for 2 years, and that I was here with my little sister all along. Okay, so I think this just needs to be reframed because so they're in a house. So Casper's in their own house. They ran away, but then the nickname came out as if I'd never left home at all, like I hadn't been gone for 2 years, and that I was home with my little sister all along, and that I was here. But isn't here the house that Casper ran away to, or that Casper's currently in? So I think right now it's just a little confusing, but I just wanted to make sure. 8 years younger than me. I'd missed 2 years. I wouldn't let that happen again. Yeah, that's fine. But I think it's just the setting up at this present moment. I think it just needs rewording. The detail of the nightmare scene was thrilling. It does make me wonder, where did he taste rotting flesh before? I assume he came from a poor background. Yeah, that's a really good call out, Lmae. I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. That's a really, really great call out. During, I think she means fluidly. Yeah, I think like hadn't been gone for 2 years and I was here with my sister all along. The nickname came out fluently. Fluently. Yeah, I'd agree. I think this is fluidly as well. The nickname came out fluidly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably what she meant. Okay, so 8 years younger than me. I'd missed 2 years. I would have let that happen again. Nourished inside. All right. So I think this was the first thing that confused me. And I think this is what got me out of it because I just wasn't sure like who was where. Right. I was clear with Casper and the gun. Casper and the gun in the house, two strangers coming up, one of them's her sister. Perfect. I got that. Casper's the dog. That's cool. That's clear. So that was clear, but I think that got me a little bit. And then we have Amani rushed inside and I let the figure beside her pass me into the house. Her hood's still up. Okay. So Amani is with a figure. Perfect. And I let the figure beside her pass me into the house. Their hood's still up. My only question is if Casper literally just grabbed a gun out of fear that like somebody, it could be somebody. Does Casper trust Amani so much, even though it sounds like Casper hasn't seen Amani in 2 years, to bring a random stranger into the house? This could be just a subjective thing. This could just be me, but this is just something to think about, Lorelei. All right, let's see what happened to Amani. I don't understand, I said quietly, placing Luna nudged Adam on his hands. This is good. All right, and then we get his description. His hair was short hair and jet black, and his eyes filled with fear. Okay, I know what I'm missing now. So I need to know what they look like. I need some type of indication of what they look like. The first person that I get a description of was the stranger. But right now we have Casper and Amani. And now once again, because this is an excerpt, you could have set them up previously in a previous section. So then that technically doesn't matter. But even if Casper was already set up, we'd still need to set up like Amani. We know Amani's the sister, but right now I have no clear idea what either of them look like. I don't know what the dog looks like. I don't even know what the breed of the dog is, but the first clear description I get is the guy's, which is cool. His hair was short hair and jet black, and his eyes filled with fear. Were two different colors, green and blue. His hair was short hair and jet black, and his eyes filled with fear. Were two different colors, green and blue. That the reason I got this is this just needs to be reworded. This is just grammatically. His hair. Let's see. So I would do. If I was going to fix this, I'll show you a really quick example, Lorelei. So let's see. This is always a good thing. So he had short black. He had short jet black hair, and his eyes filled with fear. Can your eyes be full of fear? Yeah, I think from a description standpoint. Okay, he had short jet black hair and eyes full of. He had short jet black hair. Actually, because we're doing the eyes, and then I would go. He had short jet black hair. His green and blue eyes were were full of fear. Were filled with fear. Were full of. His green and blue eyes looked up at me. His green and blue eye, his left eye was swollen and bruised, and his chin was bleeding. Okay, so he had short jet black hair. The bruises around his green and blue eyes, the bruises around his green and blue eyes gushed with blood. Gushed with blood from whatever fight he had gotten into, right? So she's assuming it's a fight, but she doesn't know this stranger. So I would actually cut that out because that then feels like it's the author trying to tell me. So I would say he had short jet black hair. The bruises around his green and blue eyes gushed with blood. He looked up at me fearfully. Perfect. So this is how I would reframe it with getting rid of that last part. So this is just a little clearer and it's more concise. He had short jet black hair. The bruises around his green and blue eyes gushed with blood. He looked up at me fearfully. Now, of course, there's 100 different ways that you could reframe something like this. This is just one example. But right now, just the wording of it was just a little confusing. Yeah, why don't you get some rest, lass? And then this is the guy. He's not a delinquent, Cass. He saved me. Why don't you get some rest, lass? We're safe now. His voice was deeper than I expected, and as he peeled away his jacket, his muscles bulged. The boy only had to be 15 at the least. So this is interesting, right? But so this is clearly the guy. Okay, so the boy is 15. So once again, she keeps calling him boy. And I think the challenge is because we don't have an age. I don't have a clear indication of of Casper. And I think because I don't have a clear picture of Casper, I don't know how old Casper is, other than that they have a gun. When they're calling this 15-year-old boy, yeah, because Casper is we have the Casper and the sister, the Grinleys. And I was wondering the nickname as if I never left home with my little sister. Is Casper a male or a female? I think I lost that. I'm pretty sure it made sense in the second section excerpt. I'm pretty sure Casper is a dude. Okay, because this is Matsi. I know this is a separate section, Matsi and Amani. Or was Casper a female? So once again, it's just the setup. I wasn't sure if Casper was a male or a female, but that could have just been me. Maybe I missed it. We know the dog's a female. We know the sister, obviously the sister, and then the 15-year-old boy. But I think it's because I'm just missing the setup. And Mass Toast, you bring up a good point. So you say the setting world building has some room for improvement. What's interesting is Lorelei does some things actually very well in it, but because the setup for each of these things is just a little confusing or lacking, we don't actually get the cool things that happen. Right? We don't get to pay as much attention to the world building because as a reader, we're trying to figure out like, okay, so what do they look like? What do they look like? What is this house situation? It's really just the setup of it, which is the opportunity. I would agree. Okay, then so that was for that part. Let me get into the second excerpt as well. Durian had a great idea here. His left eye, the green one, and the blue one too, were filled with fear. Unless the eyes are blue and green mixed, which is much more common. Ooh, I didn't even think about that. So you're right. You probably have to distinguish. I didn't even think about them being a mix, but you're absolutely right. That is an absolutely great suggestion, though. His left eye, the green one, and the blue one too, were filled with fear. Great recommendation. By the way, Tiara, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here, my friend. All right, let's hop into the second excerpt. The second excerpt was much stronger. It was much stronger, and the reason being is because you didn't have to do as much setup for it. So it's very clear that we have our main character. Let's see, my hand reaches, and then Amani's doorframe. So it's clear that we have the main character, Matsi, is leaving for some type of midnight thing. He goes towards Amani's door frame. The setting is very straightforward. So that's why the setting for this one is clear. And then he's looking into her room, and then she screams, and like, okay, and like you do this very well. Like the romance sexual aspect of this works well. Of like, all right, Matsi's sneaking out, and then he's like stops by a room and he peeks in, and she's looks very attractive at that point in time, and then he slips in. You have this whole romance sleeping vibe thing going on. I think the only thing I would set up, because we don't, unless this is your intention, we just don't want Matsi to come across creepy. And you have to make sure that you clarify what their relationship is, because right now, based on this dream, I mean, it is a dream, which is fine, but I imagine you want the reader to like Matsi. And because of that, you want to set up their relationship in like a sentence, right? Because right now what's happening is Matsi is sneaking into the room. Amani is sleeping, and then basically looks like she's like sleeping with very light clothing on. He goes there, he lifts the covers up, he lifts her shirt up, and he looks underneath and is like, okay. Now, if they don't have that, if they've never had sex before, they have never had a connection like that, then that could potentially come across creepy. But if they've been dating for, if they're married, that'd be a different thing. Now, obviously, I know they're probably not married, but I think you need to set up their relationship or their dynamic just a little bit in a sentence. I've known Matsy for years, or we just met, only so you don't chance making Matsy come across as a creeper. Because right now it's kind of like it could potentially be taken that way, and don't want that to be, because it's actually a really cool scene. Let's see. I saw her name as I get hard. Yep. And then we have, so all of this was fine. I know she feels the same. I love you. Okay. I breathe heavily into her hair. So I like that. I like that you have the I love you bit. What it is, I want some type of setup for how in the first paragraph, very first paragraph. My hands shake. I place my hands against her skin, the whole body, with my mouth trailing her neck down to her collarbone, and I hesitate at her shirt. And this is great, right? So clearly you have him, Amani, he says her name and it gets hard. He fumbles with the hem of her shirt. Clearly we got this like this like connection. It kind of feels like, I definitely thought you were going to have them like hooking up, and she was going to wake up and be that whole like midnight fantasy, which could be potentially super sexy. So I thought that's the direction you were taking in, which is awesome, because you were doing the setup that we were expecting. It doesn't take me how eager I was to taste her. I regained my composure, shamed my rashness. Good. It doesn't take me long to notice her breathing has stopped. Any thought of pleasure escapes me. So I would actually, it doesn't take me long to notice her breathing has stopped. I would actually get rid of this, right? Because you want that to be like a shock moment as much as possible. So with things like this, less is more. It doesn't take me long to notice her breathing has stopped. Amani? Perfect. And then once again, no way, this is him speaking. JK, never mind. I shake her slightly. Normally, any movement like that would have awakened her already. Normally, I shake her slightly. Normally, any movement like that would have awakened her already. Yeah, that's fine. I glance back at the sound behind me and then back again. I glanced back at a sound behind me. How can you glance back at a sound? Okay, so it's like you're hearing a sound, so you can't glance at a sound. So once again, so this just needs to be reworded, right? Because you can't glance at a sound. I glance back at a sound behind me. I know what you're trying to say, right? I heard something, so I looked behind. Perfect. So I think I would just reword this, right? And make it something creepy, right? Something unexpected. I heard or a clicking sound. A clicking sound. Let's see, a scratching sound like nails, a scratching sound like nails on chalkboard, a scratching sound like nails on chalkboard, echoed behind me. So I turn my head, right? This is just one random example. Nothing. I turned, nothing. I looked back at Amani. I looked back at Amani. Her clothes. I looked back at Amani. Her clothes were torn and tattered. And I think that's how I would do that, because you just need to make that sound clear. The smell of hot rotting flesh filled my senses, making my eyes water. That was cool. So I would actually leave that in its own paragraph. Let this be a moment, like let it be impactful that the end of this paragraph is like, oh shit, what just happened? We were just doing this like cool, sexy scene. So the smell of hot rotting flesh fills my senses, making my eyes water. Gouges in her body exposed her rib cage and her intestines. Gouges in her body exposed her rib cage and her intestines, and her breasts now visible, but my mind is far from that. I would actually change this, because this kind of comes across kind of weird right now, because like the person that you love, if they're basically mutilated, right? You're not even going to be thinking about their breasts. Like that's literally going to be the last thing. So right now, this just makes it seem like, oh, okay, that just doesn't feel realistic. So I would instead say her breasts are damaged. Gouges in her body exposed to rib cage and her intestines. Her breasts, her chest. Because I would move away from the sexual. Her chest was scratched, unless you want to do something like specifically something like her breasts were torn or something like that. Her chest was scratched. Her chest was bleeding profusely with bones sticking out. Right. And then now we don't, because that's obvious, right? If you see someone, their chest bleeding and like clearly like something's wrong, right? Now we know like, okay, this is probably a dream. And then the rest of this, I was actually pretty good with this. I watch as Amani climbs from the bed, bones and ligaments snapping and twisting as the weight of her figure rests on her brittle corpse. I absolutely love that. This is such a cool line. Her intestines begin spilling out as she takes a step closer. This beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I think that you could always add because you had the smell earlier, which is great. I think you could always add maybe how it sounds. Like how does it sound, the intestines smacking the floor? If you're dealing with this type of nightmare, every single sense is going to be like heightened, right? Every sense is heightened. So I think that'd be my only recommendation, but I absolutely love the visual. This was great, 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 great. And such a contrast to the sexual buildup that you had earlier. And that's why this scene actually works out very, very well. And taste of rotting flesh still lingers in my mouth as my handshake. Yeah, I think this is one thing. I know Lmae brought it up at one point. What was that? The taste of the rotting flesh. Yeah, the detail of the nightmare scene was thrilling. It does make me wonder, where did the taste of rotting flesh, where did he taste it before? So, right. So this one thing of like, has he tasted rotting flesh? If he has, great. But otherwise it just makes us question, right? We're like, okay, so does he like work in a morgue, or has he, because he's a soldier, I think, maybe something along those lines. So just something to think about, Lorelei. Awesome. And that's all that I got for you, my friend. Once again, really, really great work. It doesn't look like I was able to get to the last excerpt, but you're always more than welcome to resubmit in future shows. But that was really good. And I think what I really loved about that, what I really, really enjoyed about that section, or that piece, here we go. So I like that we have that there's things that you need to work on. I actually really like that, because there's things that you're doing well, and I think you want to improve upon the things that you do well, because a lot of writers who are in here, a lot of writers who come to the Right Now community are generally working on trying to get their first books published, whether it's the first book, it's a series, maybe they're trying to write the book still at whatever part of the process. So I think as we continue to learn from the different things we need to work on, these prove as good examples of how important it is to set up your characters, right? Because as writers, we have to accomplish so much. We have to do so much with our stories. We have to do like 100 things. Now, boiling it down, we can boil that down into, right? And I try to make it easy of like, okay, character development, world building, dialogue, plot, structure. If I can break the things down into these 5 elements, then I can figure out where the problem was, right? So it's like, even with that one, the character development was actually pretty interesting. I liked it. The world building was actually pretty interesting, but the problem was in the first section, it was the setup, right? Which the setup goes a little bit more into structure, but it still doesn't allow us to fully explore these ones. And then the second one, the description was awesome. So the structure was great. But then the second one was more, a little bit more of like the grammar, and then just clarifying a little bit of the world building elements. So I always like to clarify. So that was a lot of fun. Awesome. And this is another good descriptor, Lmae. His heterochromatic blue and green eyes. I'm like, I don't even know if I know what heterochromatic means. I was like, that's a great word though. Heterochromatic. Heterochromatic is, let's see, we're learning a new word today. Oh, that's not pretty. All right, heterochromatic. Heterochromatic. Make sure I got these things. All right, so heterochromatic means of several different colors or in physics wavelengths. Biochemistry relating to, so yeah, so it's probably of several different colors of wavelengths. I actually kind of like that. Lmae, you kind of just gave me a really good idea, actually. And because this is like something that I know I need to continue doing. Let's see. So I actually think I'm going to start moving with learning a new word every day. You gave me the really good idea for that. I'm gonna start learning a new word every day on these live streams. I've been really guilty of not getting enough reading in because I'm just so busy between all the live stream stuff and then the business stuff. But I know I want to incorporate it back into my schedule along with the rest of my life things that I'm doing. So, but I think something I can do is maybe on the live streams I start like we learn a new word every day. That was a great word, by the way. If there's one thing we know as readers, we like to read things that use a variety of word choice. The greater our vocabulary, the more we're able to craft sentences, paragraphs that convey the story that we want to tell. Absolutely. And then also part of it is also we have to be aware of our readership and who is reading our stories and what type of word choice they may or may not expect. Children's stories, word choice will be way different than a mature fantasy story. Absolutely. So awesome. And the Andrea Donoso, welcome to the stream, is a condition that usually manifests on eyes with different colors. That's actually kind of cool. That's kind of a cool thing to think about. Is a condition heterochromatic is a condition that manifests on eyes. I wonder how frequently that happens. It's kind of like a cool thing for a character actually. So it's a certain type of condition that's really intriguing. All right, beautiful. So what we're gonna do next, let me queue up the next story and Lmae. Lmae, I got your story queued up, my friend. Altered One, a fantasy mystery. So I've got your story queued up, Lmae. I'm gonna be pulling up your story right now. But I'm kind of curious for those of you here in the chat, when you're reading a book, do you have an expectation for the word choice that's used in like the books that you read? Do you expect there to be different words in like every single page? Like, do you think there should be a variety? Or are you more like, okay, I care less about the word choice. I just want to understand what's going on. I'm very curious. I'm gonna drop this in the YouTube chat because I think that's actually a really good question. All right. Do you expect a large variety of word choice when reading books? When do you expect a large variety of word choice when reading books, or would you rather just or do you prefer simpler language so you can understand what's going on? All right. Do you expect a large variety of word choice when reading books, or do you prefer simpler language so you can just understand what's going on? Perfect. There's my oh my prompt's too long. Do you expect a large variety of word choice, or do you prefer simpler language, or do you prefer simple language so you can understand, or do you prefer simple language when reading? Perfect. Do you expect a large variety of word choice or do you prefer simple language? So this was just a random question that came to mind. So I just dropped that in the chat. Beautiful. I'm just kind of curious because I'm always trying to learn new words myself. And I'm always thinking of like, okay, so do I need to have what how diverse do I make my words, or maybe I make them simpler, because then we have to kind of balance out, right? Is it more important for the reader to understand what's happening in this moment, or do I try to paint more of a description and more imagery for the next part of the story? So definitely drop a comment. I would love to hear your feedback. Let's see, Doreen. My mother had one brown eye and one half blue, half brown. Never knew anyone else with different color eyes. Me neither. I've never met anybody with two different color eyes, but I know we see that in movies. I know we see that in media and sometimes in books. It's interesting. I'm very curious now how rare that is, because this is actually very, very interesting to me. How rare is it? How rare is it to have different colored eyes? It's rare to have different color eyes, or okay, and this is what you were saying, Andrea. So I'll put this back here so you guys can see this real fast. Yeah, because I was just kind of curious. I'm like going down the rabbit hole. It's rare to have different colored eyes, or heterochromia, affecting about 6 in every 10,000 people. Yeah, there you go. I see. 1%. Yeah, 1% of the population have it. Yep. So 6 in every 10,000. Like that's crazy. Yet then we come up with these stories where we have characters with different colored eyes, but it's probably a very extremely rare recessive trait, is my guess. So definitely something to think about if we're using that the different colored eyes. It can be a thing, right? But I think we have to recognize that it's a rare trait. Absolutely. And I think we like to see it used a little bit more consistently and predominantly than is probably due to the rarity than the actual rarity of it, because it looks cool, is my guess why a lot of writers do it. Let's see, soul. So depending on the age target group, young adult, kid, I expect the word choices to be appropriate and understandable to that age group. That's a good call out. I mean, if you're writing in the young adult category, right, then you need to think about young adult. We're thinking about teenagers. We're thinking about what's that? What young adult is probably what, teenager to early 20s? I think it's just teenager. What age range is young adult specifically? Age range, young adult is 18 to 22. Okay, or 18 to 25. Okay, so that's like late teen to early 20s, right? So I mean, generally they should have a good understanding of vocabulary right now, but they may or may not be very well read, right? And especially in the age of social media, that could always go back and forth. So like kid, you're obviously for children's, you're gonna have to use very simple language. Young adult, you might be able to use a little bit more complicated, but you don't want to go too much, right? For me, like I didn't even know what heterochromia was, right? So let's say you use heterochromia in a paragraph to describe the eyes. You can potentially get the gist of it. But if you do something like that every single paragraph, you don't want a chance losing your reader, right? You don't want a chance losing them because they just don't understand or they don't know the words, right? So good call out. So depends on the world building and characters. Okay, so you think it's more contingent on the story that you are telling? Absolutely. I think there's absolutely a factor there. I think with that we have to balance the needs of the story with with who we're writing the book for. If we're writing the book just for ourselves and just to have fun, then the readership does not matter because we're just writing a book for ourselves and to have fun. If you are writing a book for an eventual readership, to eventually make money, to do the things of being an author, then you got to take the readership and the category into account as well, right? It's like a balancing act, right? It's figuring out what is the right amount for both factors. I like it understandable. Hard words are okay, but they shouldn't stand out. hmm I I think what was that? We've done about 140 story. No, 150. I think we've probably done closer to 160 to 180 story submissions on the critique show so far. And I want to say of all the stories, I think there's only been like 2 or 3 where they used very, very advanced language, and the language itself made it difficult to read. So I would absolutely agree with that. Interesting. Henry Cavill has heterochromia. He has blue eyes, and there's a tiny bit of brown in one of them. Interesting. Interesting. I never would have thought about that. That's actually cool to know. Henry Cavill. Let's just pull up a picture. I was wondering if it's something that's obvious. Yeah, hard to say from pictures online. I think about Henry Cavill was he did Witcher, right? Yeah. Wow, he's actually done a lot of things. I just haven't seen most of those things that he's been in. Okay, so that's actually really interesting. Let's see, Doreen, it shouldn't seem like the author wanted to impress me with their vocabulary. That can happen sometimes. And I think there is a way to do a story with advanced vocabulary. I think there absolutely is, but it has to be for a mature audience. And I think you would have to be intentional with how you're using the descriptions to support the advanced vocabulary. Absolutely. Right. You could write a book with the intent of like, hey, I want my readers to enjoy the story, but I also want them to learn new words. So that could be an intent. You just have to be intentional with what the strategy is. It's not the same, but Pratchett and Gaiman put a version of Good Omens where they annotate the UK slang so that American understand it. Oh, dude, that's pretty funny, actually. I haven't seen Good Omens. Let's see. I haven't seen the show or read the book. How many? Let's see. Good Omens was a book series originally, right? Let's see. Good Omens. I want to say. It's interesting because I'd only heard of Good Omens through the TV series that launched. Let's see. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. That makes sense. I'm just curious. So Good Omens actually came out in 1990. Wow. And you know what's interesting? Both Gaiman and Pratchett are obviously great, great, great authors. I'm not as familiar with. I don't read as much of Pratchett's work, but I definitely know and recognize he's a great author. Awesome. Clearly, we go down the rabbit hole over here. All right, David Bowie had two different color eyes. That one I did know. I did know about the Bowie one. The Bowie's is a little bit more obvious. Awesome. So let me pull up. This is a great segue. So Lmae, I've got your story pulled up. We're going to be hopping into some fantasy, a fantasy mystery, which will be super fun. So we get fantasy mystery. Let's go here. Perfect. So I got fantasy mystery with LeMay. And here we go. All right, perfect. And before we hop into the story, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I'm here with the Right Now community every single day, 250 plus consecutive streams and counting. We have writing sprints, a writing community, author interviews with our podcast. We have our critique show. We have the Blurb and Pitch Fest. We have a website stream coming up. We have a fiction contest coming up and much, much more. So if you need motivation, if you need inspiration, or if you just want to come hang out with other writers, we're here every day. Tap those buttons, tap that follow button, tap that subscribe button, and you'll be alerted when we go live. And if you're on YouTube, make sure that bell notification is checked so you'll be alerted for every live stream. All right, beautiful. So let's hop into story number 2, Altered One, Fantasy by LeMay. So for those of you who missed out, I want to say we read the first chapter of LeMay's book. I want to say that was, I want to say that was a couple weeks ago. I think that was about a month ago when we did LeMay's. Yeah, I would say that was probably about a month ago. All right, so I got LeMay's here, and then we are all set up. So we got here. Now, LeMay, I'm going to assume that you wanted me to start off at the next section that we had left off at this part that you had highlighted, and not from the beginning. Sometimes some authors or some writers will resubmit, and they want me to go review stuff that they've submitted previously, or they want me to continue on. I know you're here in the chat, so if you could just clarify. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So this was the right one. Beautiful. Glad I got that. And then let me just pull up. We had a little about. All right. So for Lmae, so the story we are reading is titled Altered One. And just a little brief blurb. So Ivan Inquis is a young detective hailing from the Inquis family, a line of imperial investigators and spies tasked with solving crime involving weavers, powerful beings capable of controlling Aether, the fifth element. After let's see, after and we I won't do that because I know I won't give away that that plot point because we might be getting it into this. Perfect. So essentially, they're going to be going on a quest. All right, I think that's a good lead up. I'm Aether. That's really interesting, by the way. The fifth element. Ooh, I'm intrigued. Okay, so let's get into it. Later that evening, Bryson and Tristan reserved one of the school's labs to finish their project. The room had rows of adjustable metal work tables, a chalkboard, in front. On the right wall was a fire extinguisher, a metal sink and cabinet space, and to the left was a row of windows that opened outwards. Hours passed since the boys arrived, and the sun retired for the night. Bryson rubbed his bandaged forehead. Even though it stopped throbbing, the pressure within his cranium was nearly unbearable. Tristan looked over their notes, making sure his friend could see. They huddled over an Aetherian loom, a metallic contraption that was about 10 by 15 inches and 3 inches deep. It consisted of a pronged, ball-tipped grid, and the base were two buttons and a knob. I think I think we will get it this time. Bryson mustered a smile and nodded. However, Tristan remained grim and did not return his friend's cheerful expression. Instead, he looked at the bags underneath his friend's eyes and then zoomed in on the bandage underneath his goggles. Tristan lowered his gaze. Maybe we should continue this tomorrow. It is getting late and we both need some rest. Bryson's face turned crimson and he clenched both of his fists that he held up to his chest. No way! I'm not letting you stop because of me. I'm not. If you keep doing this, I'm going to refuse to be your lab partner. I can't stand being a burden to you. You're not thinking about what that scumbag said to you. He does have a point. Tristan placed his hand on Bryson's shoulder. I I picked you as my lab partner because unlike the stuck-up social climbers who go here, I can trust you. I don't have to worry about you stabbing me in the back, demanding me favors, or dumping your work for me. You always try your hardest, and that's all I can ask for. More importantly, you're my best friend, and I enjoy your company. Bryson smiled. He pulled down his goggles and slipped on his rubber gloves. I still want to try this one last time. All right. Tristan hit the button on the loom. A light glowed from Tristan's pointer finger, and he touched the device's metal prong. He affixed a thread of energy on the point of the grid, and carefully and methodically, he created interlocking triangles. Tristan hesitated for a moment when he got to a tricky part that he could not quite remember, and the woven strings of light began to quiver. Continue to F7, then skip to S3. Bryson looked at his friend, brimming with confidence. Tristan nodded, and he continued to work on their project, with Bryson chiming in whenever Tristan paused for too long. After a couple of nerve-wracking minutes, their pattern was finished, and the two novice weavers took a step back to admire their work. The threads seemed to be the proper thickness, but for the moment of truth, Tristan hit the button on the device, and the intricate overlapping triangular threads of energy remained shimmering on the grid. Yes! A stable Atticus Salamander's Blaze sequence. The two lab partners tightly clasped each other's hands. And Tristan's countenance brightened, allowing himself to let out a toothy grin as Bryson's smile grew larger. We did it! We finally did it! Tristan chuckled as he gently placed the rectangular glass cover on the apparatus and locked down the four latches on its side. I could not have asked for a better lab partner. Bryson zipped up his bag and he glanced around their work area to make sure he did not forget anything. That was the most complex sequence we ever did. I can't wait to be able to do it without the loom. When everything was put away, they exited out of the lab and strolled down the gloomy hallway, dimly lit from the school's backup generators. Tristan felt his left eye twitch and rubbed it with the palm of his hand. You want to try Professor Skillwright's extra credit challenge? Why not? It will turn this project into an atomic A. And I really need to bump up my grade after my last project. Yeah, we will try it tomorrow. A familiar scent wavered up Bryson's nostrils, causing the young man to stop in his tracks and try to figure out where it came from. Hey, Tristan, do you smell that? S- Smell what? Tristan caught up with his friend, who was 2 paces ahead of him. His nose twitched to a smell he never thought he'd experience again. Tristan's pupil constricted into pinpoint, and he froze in place. Clueless of his friend's face, growing paler and paler, Bryson continued his pursuit of the odor around the hallway, now peering inside the workrooms. How strange. Who is snacking on blueberry muffins at this hour? Do you think they'll share some with us? He turned to Tristan, who was now sweating profusely. Muffins? You are smelling muffins? Bryson became bewildered and concerned of his companion's frazzled state. Yes, you don't smell it? Tristan vigorously shook his head. No. It must have been my imagination. Let's hurry up and get out of here. Bryson gave out a forced chuckle that failed to calm either of their nerves. Right. I guess we had enough excitement. We'll abandon this mystery for another day. They continued down the long corridor, and the glow from the red exit sign blared stronger as they continued onward. When they grew closer to the crimson beacon, a form emerged from the shadows, blocking the corridor's exit like sentry of the night. Before either of them could squint their eyes and wonder if their fatigued minds were playing tricks on them, the walls began to liquefy. The space around them melted into a rapidly growing amorphous puddle. The space around them melted into a rapidly growing amorphous puddle. What is going on? Bryson held out his trembling right hand and watched in horror as its flesh pulled and dripped off of the bone. He did not know which was more unsettling, the visuals or the lack of pain. Instead, it felt like someone gently tugging on his skin. Tristan placed their project underneath his right arm and gripped his friend's shoulder. We have to get out of here! He could sense his face droop below his chin, and Bryson, recoiling from after catching a glimpse of his visage, confirmed his suspicion that it must have been a ghastly sight. The cadet weavers fled towards another exit, at the opposite end of the corridor, only to find the once metal door had melted and was unusable. Tristan seized Bryson's hand, only for it to break from the wrist and seep through his fingers. It took everything within him to subdue his panic, but Tristan knew he had to be strong for both of them to survive. Come on, we got to get out of his range. They turned down another hallway and tried the exit on the other side of the building. Oohing someone-ish, going-ish. Most of Brian's head was gone, and his movement slowed as his feet pooled and meshed with the dissolving floor. He struggled to lift them after every stride. No doubt about it. This is a Weaver's doing, and whoever it is, he is on a whole different level. A black blob spurred up from the ground, and its form solidified into a tall black figure as everything else around it dripped into nothingness. Tristan pressed on, even after feeling parts of him break away whenever he took a step. He could no longer He could no longer sense his project underneath his arm, Bryson next to him, or anything else at all. Out of desperation, Tristan drew out a rectangular pattern with a quickly decreasing pinky finger. Get out of the way! The bright light from his finger backfired, and they fell backwards through the melting floor. Interesting. All right. Let's see. In the school's austere lobby of cut stone columns and archways that line the walls, a long granite security desk, manned by a hefty guard who was more fat than muscle, snored through his crossed arms. Above him was a welcome sign with the school's emblem, an imposing rock with its wings outstretched. An ear-piercing cry jolted the guard up from his slumber, knocking him out of his chair. Huh? What now? He rose to his feet, cursing while rubbing his sore back. The arch windows gave little light for it was still early morning, and the sun had not risen yet. Before the rotund man could dismiss the howl as a troublesome nightmare, the scream returned, growing louder and louder. Now the sound was accompanied by pounding footsteps, rushing down the hall right towards him. The guard's pulse began to race, and he clasped his chest because the frightened man believed his heart was going to break out if he didn't. His body shook after each beat, and the guard's mind fluctuated between fleeing, freezing, or fighting his way out. When the figure shot out of the doorway, the guard just made it from behind his desk, armed with his nightsack. He closed his eyes and wielded the club above his head. "Stay back!" "Yeah, Mr. Parker!" Mr. Parker peeked out of one eye and saw a ghostly pale man shirking back with his hands raised. The screaming man was lanky like a beanpole and dressed in a janitor's jumpsuit. Mr. Parker lowered his nightstick. "Smith? What the devil came over you? You almost gave me a heart attack." Oh. The scrawny man was out of breath and could barely sputter out a syllable. When he was finally able to form words, they came out as abrupt shudders. Someone is dead." "What? In the training room? Oh my lord, it's all over the place." "All right, sit down over there and I will go check it out." Smith sat in one of the armchairs in front of the desk, hunched over with his hands covering his eyes and his elbows on his shivering thighs. Mr. Parker retrieved his flashlight from his belt and braved the gloomy hallways of the academy alone. After traversing to the back end of the school, he reached the wooden, bolted double doors of the training room. A sliver of light from the ajar door leaked down into the hallway. Mr. Parker gathered his courage and stepped into the room. Immediately, he let out a scream, mimicking that of Smith, abandoned his flashlight at the scene, and ran. A loathsome pair of cadet boots among a sea of red was the only thing he could recall to investigators later that morning. The rest he etched out of his mind. Ooh. That was creepy. Wow, 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 wow. Lmae, very, very well done. Woo, that was awesome. Woo. So, wow. So first off, what a really, really great cliffhanger. That was really interesting. Clearly, we saw the two boys dealing with some type of weaver magic who was doing some creepy thing to them. That was fun. I would say overall, the flow of the scene, the flow of this part of the chapter actually worked out really well. And I believe this was the end of the first chapter. Okay, so this was the end of the prologue. Awesome. Awesome. So you could tell that the point of this was we were further solidifying the two boys' friendship in the classroom scene. And then them walking, we have the blueberry muffin smell thing. So some type of magic that's probably related to the dark weaving magic. And then something evil is happening to them. And it kind of feels like they're basically like disintegrating or basically like coming apart or unraveling in a way. So I think the pacing of it was actually really cool. I think the pacing was well done. I would say one of the strongest parts about this is absolutely the world building. Lmae, I can tell how much effort and how much time you put into fleshing out this world. And I could even tell with the times that you've touched upon weaving, how much depth there is to it, even though we haven't explored it too greatly yet. So I would say world building is the strongest. I would say absolutely world building. I'm loving the plot so far. So far, the plot works very well for me. I'd say world building is great. Plot is great. Character development. Let me think. Trying to think of if I have a sense of the characters. Kind of. I think there's an opportunity for the character development aspect of it. And then in terms of the structure itself is fine, but I think maybe some use of grammar or descriptions. So yeah, I would say maybe the description portion of it would be an opportunity. Hey, what's up, Courtney? By the way, welcome to the stream, my friend. I'm glad you could hop in. Okay, so let's go into it. So for those of you who didn't read the previous section with us, I want to say that the first section was basically setting up those two characters with the class of other kids as they're doing this type of like spell, this kind of like duel type, like Harry Potter type magic. Duel is what it felt like, but it's all about weaving and weaving magic, which was cool. So I remember that was the opening scene that we had gone through last time. And I know both the characters had been set up previously, which was great. So I know we have Bryson and Tristan, and they're the two main characters. So let's go into this because you've already set up the characters. So that could have just been me because we're hopping into a section of it. Let's see. The room had rows, hours passed. Yep. So, and once again, your descriptions for the environment are really good, which is why your pacing works very well because we have a clear sense of where they are and what's going on, right? They're going in there for some type of project that they've been assigned to work together on. Let's see. Bryson rubbed his bandaged forehead, even though it stopped throbbing. Okay, so Bryson is the one with the bandaged forehead who just got beat up basically in the duel. They huddled over an Aetherian loom. I actually really love what you did with this loom. This is interesting. So, an Aetherian loom, a metallic contraption that was about 10 by 15 inches and 3 inches deep, consisted of a prolonged ball tipped grid. It consisted of a pronged, so it's a pronged ball tipped grid. And at the base were two buttons and a knob. Okay, perfect. So it gives us enough description, then we can fill in the rest. I think this is interesting because this is world building essentially. We're like, okay, cool. So they're doing some project with this, some contraption. So I think that was awesome. Okay, so Bryson mustered a smile and nod. However, Tristan remained grim and did not return his friend's cheerful expression. Instead, he looked at the bags underneath his friend's eyes. Okay, so I think this lost me for a second, but I just want to make sure it wasn't just me. So right now, Bryson. Okay, so Bryson Tristan. I want to say Tristan is the POV character. I'm pretty sure Tristan is POV in this. Later that day, Bryson Tristan in the room had Bryson rubbed his back, even though they huddled over. Tristan looked over their notes. Bryson rubbed the chain at the end felt a bit off to me, but maybe it was me. Bryson rubbed his bandaged forehead, even though it stopped. Bryson mustered a smile and nodded. However, Tristan remained grim and did not return his friend's cheerful expression. Bryson is the one with the bandage. Okay, so Bryson's the bandage. Bryson is the beaten up one. Tristan, and so he looked at the bags underneath his friend's eyes and then zoomed in on the bandage underneath his goggles. Okay, because this is basically a Tristan POV. Okay. Tristan lowered his gaze. Maybe. Okay, so this is why. Okay. All right. Now I know why I was confused by this. So this is just a setup in the paragraph because right now you haven't clarified who the POV character is in this section because they're both together, which is fine. But in this section, we're kind of getting two POVs in a sense. We're kind of getting Bryson mustered a smile and nodded. Okay, so then I think, okay, Bryson's the POV. However, Tristan remained grim and did not return his friend's cheerful expression. But then this suggests Tristan is the POV instead. So, okay, so clearly Tristan is the POV, which is what I thought. So I would actually just change this. Bryson mustered a smile and nodded. However, Tristan. What if we took this out and we made this its own paragraph? Let's see. It consisted, Bryson rubbed his bandaged forehead, even though it stopped throbbing. The pressure with his cranium was nearly unbearable. So Bryson right now is rubbing the bandaged forehead, and then Tristan remained grim and did not return his friend's cheerful expression. Because technically this is Bryson started with this. I think we will get it out of this time. And then okay, I think what I would do, I would move this to the previous paragraph. Actually, I'll just do that. Nope. What? Why are you doing that? So I would just move it here. Bryson looked up. Bryson looked. Bryson mustered a smile, and I would just add that to that paragraph. That's how I would have gone about that. So that way now it's clear that this is the Tristan portion, just for a point of clarity. Tristan, instead we should continue this tomorrow. Yep. Okay, so Tristan is the one that doesn't want to do this. Bryson's the one who's beaten up and has the bandage, but Bryson is a little bit more, it seems like the go luckier, probably a little bit more the daredevil. No way, I'm not letting you stop because of me. I'm not. If you keep doing this, I'm going to refuse to be your lab partner. I can't stand being a burden to you. Yep, we know that's Bryson. You're thinking about what that scumbag said to you. This is Tristan. I would, and that's fun. I would actually add a speech tag here just so we don't chance losing the reader. Bryson, Tristan, just as a reminder. You're not thinking about what that scumbag said to you. Tristan spat with disdain. I would do something like that. Just make it easier. He does have a point. Tristan placed a hand. Yeah. Tristan spat with disdain as okay. So I would further refer to his face. Tristan spat with disdain as he pointed, as he swept a hand, as he went at the bandage on at the bandage on his friend's face. I would do something like that just as a reiteration. He does have a point. Tristan plays down on Bryson's shoulder. This is good. I actually really like this. I picked you as my lab because unlike the stuck up social climbers ago here, I can trust you. I don't have to worry about you stabbing me in the back, demand or dump your work on me. I would just cut this down a little bit. Just this is more clarity, anything. I picked you as my lab partner because unlike the stuck up social climbers who are here, I can trust you. I picked you because you want to reference the stuck up social climbers. I don't have to worry about you stabbing me in the back, demanding me favors, or dumping your work on me. I don't, I mean, this technically, this is showing you always try Harrison's like, not more importantly, I would get rid of this and I would just end this with, you're my best friend. I would just start this with you. I would end this with, you're my best friend. And I enjoy your company. Cool. So I would do that. Just make it a little shorter. That's a little bit more line editing. Bryson smiled, and I still want to try this one last time. I almost feel like Bryson should do something like something funny. It like this feels like a perfect moment for Bryson to have like a witty response. But that could just be me. But I feel like Bryson should say just like something clever of like, oh, you you don't know. Just some type of inside joke. I would do something like that because that would reiterate their friendship and make us like them even more. Okay, yeah. So this was cool. Stable Atticus salamander display sequence. I don't really know what it is, but back to admire. A stable Atticus salamander display sequence. So this is interesting. A stable Atticus salamander display sequence. It's interesting. I just want to know what it is. Even like you don't even have to fully describe what it is, but I think giving us some type of indication. They're working on some type of like loom. It's an Aetherian loom that has a grid. So it's like pointing like lasers into it and doing something with it. I think I would just clarify like what does the end product look like? Something with thread. So it's like a 3D printer, but it's like a magic 3D printer. I'm trying to like wrap my head around what it is. So I think I would just clarify like what does this an Atticus Salamander's Blaze sequence? What does that even mean? So I think adding even like one sentence of detail would help us clarify that. But their response to it is great. Bryson zipped up his bag. That was the most complex sequence we ever did. That's cool with the loom because we just want to know more about it because the loom is kind of it's doing world building essentially. Wavered is wavered the right word? I was just asking myself, is wavered wavered, shake with quivering motion, become unsteady or be undecided. Shake, wavered. A familiar scent, wavered. So I think you just need to change your use of wavered. I don't think that word works. A familiar scent wafted. I think wafted would be better. Up Bryson's nostril, causing the young man to stop in his tracks. Now, the only thing with this is I thought Tristan was her POV character. Tristan chuckled. Bryson zipped up his bag. When everything was put away, they exited out of the lab. Tristan felt his left eye twitch and rubbed it with the palm of his hands. You want to try? Why and I will turn a project. Yeah, we will try tomorrow. A familiar scent wafted up Bryson's nostrils. Yeah, so this threw me off only because I thought we were in. If we're smelling if Bryson's the one smelling, I thought Tristan was the one who's the POV. So I would just consider readjusting that. Or if you want Bryson to be the POV, just do one of the line breaks. Because you could totally do the same thing with the scent wafting up Tristan's nostrils, but then Bryson's the one that says, hey, Tristan, do you smell that? But Tristan doesn't even smell it. Okay. So nose twitcher smelling never thought he'd experience. Tristan's pupil constricted and frozen in place. Close of his friends. And this is interesting. So Tristan is sweating profusely. So Tristan's hiding something. Yeah, it actually does make me think that Bryson should be the POV of this next section. So like I would recommend, I think with Tristan before was great. I think swapping to Bryson would be really good, which is why I think I would do a change of POV could actually work well. Because it seems like Tristan's definitely hiding something. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd agree. I really like the weaving part. That was super creative, Lmae. Yeah, I absolutely love the weaving aspect of the story. Absolutely. By the way, welcome to the stream now. Let's see. I absolutely agree. I also think the world building has been super strong for this story. I think the world building is probably the strongest element of it. Let's see. They continue down the long corridor and the glow. Okay, so before either of them could squint their eyes and wonder if their fatigue minds were playing tricks on them, the walls began to liquefy. Okay, so liquefy means that the walls are basically losing their mass. Yep, so the walls are basically like shimmering, and the walls are basically becoming like water-like. The space around them melted into a rapidly growing amorphous puddle. So the walls start becoming liquidy. The space around them melted into a rapidly growing amorphous puddle. Melted. What melted is combined. Melted. Yeah. So the space around them so the air blended into a rapidly growing but so you're saying the space, so literally the air is becoming a puddle. So I think, Lmae, I think with this, because I really wanted to understand this because this was so cool, but I think your word choice, I would recommend just adjusting the word choice because that makes sense. The walls are liquefying. That's clear. The space, so literally the air is morphing into a puddle. What does that? I just don't know what that means. The space is merging into a growing amorphous puddle. Amorphous. Without a clearly defined shape or form. Okay. So the space is growing into a puddle, but if amorphous means that it's not clearly defined, so it's not, but a puddle I think is clearly defined. So I don't know if those two words work together or not. So I think this is just a matter of rewording it. What I think is happening is the walls liquefied and then the floors start liquefying as well. And you start getting these like weird blob puddles that are forming. That's what I think is happening. But I think that just needs a little bit more, just different description because I want to make sure that I'm understanding what's going on. And Bryson held out his trembling right hand and watched in horror as its flesh was pulled and dripped off the bone. And I remember when I was reading this, I was like, damn, that's crazy. He did not know which was more unsettling, the visuals or the lack of pain. Instead, it felt like someone gently tugging on his skin. All right, so his flesh is just ripped off. His flesh is literally being ripped off. Did he do something to his hand? and I guess this is what I don't know yet is it because he's touching something, or is just the entire air, why is it just his hand that's changing, or why is it just his hand that's being ripped off, and why not their entire bodies? And I think that's what I don't know. Is it makes me think that Bryson's hand is being pulled, his flesh is being ripped off because he's touching a wall, or because he's touching something, or maybe someone's just attacking him. Maybe it's an attack on him. That could be it. And if these are the questions you want me to be asking myself as a reader, Lmae, then great work. Really, really great work. Let's see. Tristan, place a project. Yep. And this is my question, would Tristan really care about their project if his friend's literal skin was just ripped off his hand? Would Tristan really care about the project? That's just a question I pose. Get out of here. But them running away is great. Confirming suspicions. The cadet weavers fled. Tristan sees Bryson's other hand only for it to break from the wrist and seep. Okay, Tristan sees Bryson's hand only for it to break from the wrist and seep through his fingers. Oh, that is so creepy. That is so cool, by the way. So awesome. It took everything with him. So he basically tried to grab Bryson's free hand, and Bryson's hand just like snaps off. God, that's so creepy. Knew you had to be strong for both of them. Come on, we got to get out of his range. And I guess something that we haven't clarified in this world, like Harry Potter world, we know if someone gets hurt, there's magic to heal them. Is there healing magic in this world with weaving? I might have actually clarified that earlier. Well, actually, I think you did. I think you did with the bandage, but I don't remember. Just something to think about, because if they know that they can be healed, then that gives the reader a little context of like, okay, like you can just go to the healing, the weaving, the healing weaver after this and get your hands grown back. Like, so it's something to think about. Let's see. You think something. So this is so cool. I absolutely love this though. Clearly they know if Bryson's lost both of his hands though, so he loses one and he loses the other, but he's not feeling the pain. So you did clarify that he doesn't feel it, which is interesting. They turned down and tried the exit on the other side of the building. Think some ish, ish. Most of Bryson's head was gone. So I think ooish. So I think I would. Most of Bryson's head was gone. So I think because we're in Tristan's POV, I think I would clarify that Tristan. Here's that. I think I would just clarify that Tristan turned. Tristan glanced over his shoulder at his friend. As friend, and gasped. I think I would just clarify that the POV second motion right there, because they're technically both running, because this originally felt like the narrator telling me it. I think that would help further cement Tristan as the POV. His movement, most of Bryson's head was gone, and his movement slowed. So when you say most of Bryson's head was gone, what does that mean? Like, that is like only like his, like the bottom, like his mouth there is only the mouth there. I was like, yeah, I think that's the question. Hmm. Yeah, so I think that's just a question that's on my mind. Maybe just an additional description on what that means. Most of Bryson's head was gone. It makes me think that the top half of his head is missing and his movement slowed. So he looks over, his friend's mumbling something, looks over, his friend's head is dissolved. All his mouth is mumbling, and then it dissolves. And he basically stops, slows down, and his movement slowed as his feet pulled and meshed with the dissolving floor. His feet pulled. Okay, so his feet basically were becoming liquid and meshed. Yeah, so his feet are basically becoming liquidy and merging into the floor. Yeah, so the floor is dissolving. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that that made sense. So his feet pulled. So his his movement slowed as his feet pulled. In honesty, I might just use a different word for it. I think I might just use a different word choice because I think that's what's getting me. Bryson's head was gone and his movement slowed as his feet as his feet as his feet liquefied, since he had already used liquid, as his feet liquefied and merged with the dissolving floor. I think merged might be a little bit more of a stronger word choice. He struggled to lift them. And I think this is fine because I don't think I think if you've already set up what happened with Bryson, then I think it's clear what's going to happen to Tristan. This is interesting. I absolutely love this. I love this so much. And then we cut back to the security guard. I think this is interesting. The security guard and the janitor. I think this is good. Do I have any problems with the in the school's austere lobby of cut stone columns? Above him was a welcome sign with the school's emblem, an imposing rock with its wings. So I actually love once again your setup of the location. Great job. And your description for this guy, hefty god who is more fat than muscle, snorted through his crossed arms. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. This is awesome. Great, great setup. And I think the questions are posing of this ear piercing cry. It was this like, okay, was this from these two kids? And then he basically runs here. He almost freaks out with the janitor, which is great. Mr. Parker. All right. Yep. So clearly we have the guard and then we had the janitor come in and the janitor is just terrified. And yeah, I was asking myself if there was like POV. I feel like there's probably some opportunities to like tweak the POV a little bit or tweak some of the descriptions that kind of just make it clearer. But it overall everything makes sense and it's understandable. But I do have to say I absolutely love this ending. This is a really, really great cliffhanger. Absolutely. An extremely great cliffhanger. I I don't even know. So, and this is my recommendation. I don't think that you even really need a setup, Mr. Parker. Yeah, I mean, I get I get why, but because the focus is on this crazy thing that happened, I don't even know if this character setup is important right now. Specifically because this is still the prologue. I would shorten the scene with the janitor and just make maybe the janitor runs in. Like we don't even need to set up the name right now. The janitor might be important later, but right now it's just not too important. We need to get the security guard to this room with the feet on the floor. I think having this false alarm with the janitor is interesting, but I think we need to get to this scene as soon as possible or this moment, right? Because we just had this crazy thing happen. And now what you're doing is you're introducing two new characters, which my guess is neither of them are important right now, unless the janitor is the bad guy. But I would, yeah, yeah, I would just less setup for these characters so we can get to that scene. But yeah, that's all that I got for you, Lmae. That is all that I got for you, my friend. Overall, once again, a really good story. I'm so intrigued by what's going on. Like, yes, it is like everything is melting into each other. Like that, I got that. I think just updating some of the word choice will help clarify that further, in all honesty. Yeah, I think you did some really fun things with that, Lmae. I'm like super intrigued by the weaving aspect of this world. And now we have the murder mystery. The two friends running through, basically melting and disintegrating body part by body part is visually like crazy. What a great prologue. What a great, great prologue. Absolutely. Wow, that was fun. Wow. Yeah, that was cool. I actually really liked that. Thanks for submitting, my friend. Thank you. I need to work my POV and clean up. Yeah, I think just being aware of the main POV, I think that's really the biggest opportunity. I think like the POV and the descriptions. I think it's so important because as readers, we're going to get set up in whoever the main character is, right? So that means everything that is happening is from somebody's perspective, right? So then when we're getting a mix of two different perspectives, it's called head hopping, which is actually a very common problem. So it's just something to be aware of because you don't want a chance losing the reader through a lack of clarity or just not the right word choice. But I understand what you're going for. So thanks for sharing that, my friend. That was really, really awesome. Let's see. And Sean made it. I thought this started at 2 o'clock. My bad. Negative, my friend. Our critique show, we usually start at what's that? Yep, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern time on Saturdays. Glad to have you here, though. Definitely glad to have you here, my friend. But you are, let's see, where are we at? Sean, I think you actually made really good timing because I'm actually queuing your story up next. So you made really, really good timing. We're actually going to be hopping into Summer's Reign next, horror thriller. So you got here at a perfect timing. Perfect timing, my friend. So I need to pull up let's see, the final draft. All right. So we're going to be hopping into another murder thriller. And we are in a really good spot with the script, by the way. We're pretty far into the script. So I think we're actually about to learn the secrets of like the backstory of the murder and the mystery. I think we're somewhere in the climax right now. So we're actually at a very fun part. And before we hop into that, I want to do a quick shout out for writer coaching. Do you need a writing coach? I just launched a brand new repurposed coaching program to help you with improving your story. So let's see, where did I put it? Here we go. So here's this. So if you're needing a writing coach, last weekend we broke down the specific reasons or the specific things that writers struggle with when dealing with a writing coach. And this is the website right here. I'll drop the website down here in the comments if you want to go check out the page. It's also down in the YouTube description down below. Writer coaching is good if you're struggling with a different number of problems that most writers deal with, right? So whether you're needing feedback on your book, you need faster feedback on your book. Do you have a clear development plan for like what is the overall process going to be? Do you know who your audience or who your readership is? Do you know how you're going to be marketing it? Do you know how you're going to be publishing it? Do you know who's going to do the book cover? These are all things that go into the development plan. This is part of the plan of treating the book like the product it is. So that way you can build a readership and hopefully eventually make some money off of it. And then accountability, we all deal with accountability, right? So if you struggle with writing consistently, or if you need feedback on your blurb, you need a series Bible, you need to put an outline together, you want to learn new writing techniques. These are all different things that a writer coach can help you out with. So I have 3 different structures. We have our hourly model. If you really just want to test it out, you pay for the number of hours that you want to use, and then we go accordingly. Or you can try out the subscription model, which is a monthly. You basically get you get one weekly book or script edit with feedback. You get 1 weekly coaching session, and then unlimited emails and messages for when you're working on your writing and you're like, hey, I had that question, I'm stuck, I got to figure this out. The great thing is if you miss weeks, the coaching session and the book edit pass over. So you can always save up if, let's say, you're super busy one week. And then we also have a book development session. If let's say like, hey, I just need a one-time like 4-hour workshop to talk about my book, talk about my script, and figure out all the problems that I'm having with it. So you feel confident in writing the book or getting it to the next stage. So those are the 3 models. Definitely really, really worthwhile. All of the clients that I've had for coaching so far have given really great feedback. So if you want to hire a writing coach or if you want to learn more, we could always set up a free consultation so I could better understand what it is you're looking for. Just shoot me an email at the Kauffman at thecreativeghost.com, or you can follow the link and click on the buttons. So, all right, perfect. So I wanted to shout that out for the writer coaching service. And now onwards and upwards to the Summer Rain. All right, Sean. So we got Summer Rain, a horror thriller by Sean Spence. Hey, what's up, Eli? Welcome back, my friend. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we're just hopping into Summer Rain. Now, Sean, I'm pretty sure last time we did this, I think we went through this beginning section. Now that I think about it. So let's see. It looks, but you could have edited it. I'm just trying to see how far because I think I got partially into it. Okay, cool. You sent the new pages. All right. So I'm pretty sure this is where we should be at then. This is what I had on your submission. So we'll dig into it and we'll see what we get. Because right now we're right in the middle of this standoff. Okay. Yeah, let's say I just wanted to make sure that I had it right. I think it starts with the flashback. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure we're here, but this is what you sent me was what we had from last time, my friend. Because I think this was the section that you had sent from last time. I just re-downloaded it just to double check. But it looks like you sent me the 93 through 101. So I think this is just what I have right now. Let's see, unless it was. Okay, I see. You sent it in the email. Okay, okay. So in the submission, it looks like you sent in. I see. I see the problem. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, for some reason the excerpt that you sent me isn't it's not opening. Yeah, because it looks like you uploaded the biggest one, 99 through 104. And what you had sent me previously, it's just not opening. Awesome. So, Sean, what I'm going to recommend is because it looks like we're having problems with which is the right excerpt. I would just send over what the correct excerpt is because I'm not sure. I don't have the 99 to 104 section. So I would say send me, oh wait, unless this is it. Nope, this is 93 to 101. Yeah. So what I would say is send me the excerpt, just send it through email and I'll queue it up next if we can get to it. So do that just because I want to be able to move on to the next one and I don't have the 99 through 104. So you're just going to have to resend it to me, it looks like. Awesome. So yeah, just send me that next one and I'll queue it up on the next one, on the next section. With that being the case, I'm going to hop forward to who I have next, which will be Eli, Mr. Minkiewitz. So, Eli, I'm going to hop into Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne. And I know I saw you here in the stream, my friend. So I have yours all set up. We'll cue this up and perfect. Perfect, perfect. All right. So Eli, if you're here in the stream, let's see. Hey, made it. Yep. So I know you're still here. All right. So we're going to hop straight into yours, Eli. And we've done previous excerpts from Eli's book before, Jaguar, Baboon Pie, and Jaguar Champagne. And let's see, I'll give you the brief little blurb about it. Let's see, Eli. So for this book, the brief little blurb, Roger Pinafore was adopted after years of bouncing from one to another foster home, following a mysterious accident that killed his parents and left him without any memory of them or his old life. His search for answers will change the world and what it means to be a person forever. Prologue, Roger 1, The Milky Way. Lake Cushman, Western Washington, May 6, 2009. It was cold outside, colder than the forecast had called for. His mother hadn't planned to leave the warmth of the cabin in any weather, and his brother and sister, the twins, Brian and Stacy, had decided it was so cold out that being able to stay up as late as they could wasn't even worth it. Cold enough that Roger could see his breath and hear his teeth, but none of that mattered. Tonight was the night he'd impress his dad. He'd practiced programming the camera, and he'd calculated where it was supposed to be out there. He'd thought of everything, and his father would recognize that. He grinned with satisfaction, looked up. His breath wasn't the only thing he could see out there that night. In the sky overhead were more stars than Roger had ever seen, and thick daubs of what looked like celestial nectar besides. Whoa, Dad, look at that! The Milky Way, Gerald smiled. Now you see why they called it that, huh, son? Roger nodded in the dark and stared at the sky. There was so much out there, so many stars. It looked like a soup of light that flowed into and through the dark of the night in fine ripples, like like damascened steel, like damascened steel. Then he thought he spotted something. Dad, I think I see it. He pointed at a mote of light shimmering among the countless others. I want to take a look, he said excitedly. This was his opportunity already. He realized that it had come so quickly. It was a good thing he was so prepared. He grunted stubbornly as he swung the telescope he had strapped over his shoulder around so he could take it off and set it up on the ground. It was big and cumbersome, not like a spyglass from a pirate ship. This was a 50-pound monster with an 8-inch aperture and programmable astronomical imaging camera. It cost over $1,000 and was a gift from his parents for making straight A's last year. They'd been so proud of him. Roger couldn't remember ever feeling better than that day. His father carried a telescope too. Both were reasonably sophisticated for pieces of amateur gear. So Gerald was also carrying a big battery bank that they could plug the telescopes into and have power all night. His father chuckled. If we head past this ridge, there's a nice even field. We can set up there and we should have a good view for as long as we want. He was pointing at the tops of the trees. These Doug firs will be blocking the good stuff by the end of the night if we stay here. Roger stood trying to wrench the telescope strap free. He'd slung it over his shoulder and then put his back on top of. He slung it over his shoulder and then put his pack on over top, which he was now regretting. The straps had gotten tangled in his excitement to use the telescope, and he was half pretzeled trying to unravel himself. I can get it, Dad, Roger insisted, catching the foot of one of the legs of his telescope on the cuff of his pants. He yanked the telescope upwards to loose it from its tangle, and it took the cuff of his pants with it and pulled him off his feet. He hit the ground hard and felt the air forced out of his lungs by the impact. He lay still for a second, grateful that it was dark out, and his father wouldn't see his reddening face. He scanned the sky desperately. Maybe if he could find it again, he could redeem his embarrassment. Before he had the chance, his father was in front of him, his hand outstretched to help him back to his feet. Gerald Pinafore was a willowy, thin sort of reed of a man. He had fine copper colored hair that lay down straight in nice little rows, a neatly trimmed Van Dyke beard, and sharp eyes that were such a yellowish green that looked almost like hawk's eyes. He was 57 years old, and the lines of age had long since run across his face. He had been 52 when he and his wife Olivia adopted Roger, just after his 11th birthday. She'd been 49. Roger caught his breath and took his father's hand. Thanks, Dad. Gerald looked at him. He dusted off his son's shoulder playfully. Oh no. Is the telescope all right? Roger said frantically, suddenly remembering. This telescope was the most expensive gift he'd ever been given. It was the most expensive thing he owned. He didn't have anything his birth parents had given him. None of his birthday gifts or even a card had followed him from his old life to this new. He couldn't stand the thought of breaking the nicest thing the Pinafores had ever given him. If the telescope was damaged, this wasn't part of his plan. His stomach felt cold all of a sudden. His stomach felt cold all of a sudden. He started to twist to pull the telescope off and start the whole brouhaha over. But Gerald left his hand on the boy's shoulder. Don't worry about the telescope just now, Roger, he said, looking at his face closely in the dark. The boy's biological parents were killed in an accident when Roger was 7 years old. He didn't have any memory of the accident, of his parents, or how he'd arrived at the orphanage. He didn't know their names. He didn't have a photograph. They must have looked nothing like the Pinafores. That much was certain. The Pinafores both had short, squatched sorts of faces. Roger's was long as a horse. Olivia had the same straight, fine copper colored hair as her husband, and eyes as cold blue as the morning that would dawn over the lake the next day. Roger's hair was a tangled mess of tow headed ringlets that absolutely refused to yield to any will but their own. Instead of their vibrant, piercing eyes, his were big and warm and brown. "You're okay?" Gerald asked his son, his hawk's eye glinting in the moonless starlight. Roger nodded. "Good." Gerald smiled and gave Roger a squeeze. "We've got my telescope in case anything did get broken. So don't go tossing yourself back on the ground over it." He laughed and turned around. "This way," he said, tromping down a path through the copse of cedar and fir surrounding the cabin. When they came out of the trees, it was into a huge clearing. It was the most beautiful thing Roger had ever seen. There was the lake in front of them, reflecting the stars and the soupy ribbons of milk covered lights. And there was the soupy ribbons of milk light between the stars, like some sky god's pillowy bed. Somehow the sky seemed to stretch further overhead than before. The horizon almost to draw back, making room, as if the night had puffed itself up like some flamboyant bird of paradise attracting potential mates. He stood there taking in the view for so long that his father was able to get his telescope and the battery bank up and running, and propped up a couple of folding camping chairs. Gerald smiled as he walked up to his son. "Unbelievable, isn't it? Hand me your telescope. Let me take a look." Gerald turned on the headlamp he was wearing and took the telescope off of Roger's shoulder as the boy took off his pack. He walked back over to the chairs and started looking at the instrument for damage. He set up the tripod and it was still sturdy. He pushed the plug into an open outlet on the battery bank, and the screen lit up like normal. "So far, so good, Roger," Gerald said without looking up. Roger didn't want to see, to have his fear realized, but before long, he had to know what was happening and came over to take a look. "Is the aperture all right?" Roger asked, trying to mask his panic. Gerald shined the headlamp over it and nodded. "Looks like it." He turned the tube over in his hands. "We'll have to take it apart to make sure. Nowhere really suitably do that out here. So why don't we just leave it be, huh? We've got mine going. It's programmed to record that spot where the asteroid ought to be. We'll be able to see it, son. Don't you worry." Roger nodded in agreement, but he was still furious over his mistake. He'd wasted his opportunity to impress his dad. He felt his face turning red again and slumped moodily down into his folding camping chair. They didn't make a fire because it would create too much light pollution and interfere with the telescope's images. The whole point of being way out here from people was to minimize light pollution. So they opted instead for a small radial space heater that plugged into the battery bank. Roger was chewing on a hunk of beef jerky and fuming with contempt for himself. His father was looking at him expectantly when Roger glanced over at him. Roger was confused. I thought he said something, Gerald prompted him. When Roger tried to answer, he couldn't figure out what his dad was talking about. Was he muttering to himself? Why did he have to be such a freak? He was so upset over the telescope that it was oozing out of him. Nobody liked being around somebody who was muttering to himself like a psycho. I was saying I have to go pee. He was relieved that he'd been able to think fast. Oh, yeah, okay, just make sure to turn your headlamp on. Gerald smiled at his son and munched a handful of trail mix happily in the starlight. Roger waited until he was well out of earshot before he stopped walking. He headed from where he and his dad had set up the tree line and walked more or less parallel to the shoreline of the lake for a minute or so. He checked the way he'd come, making sure his father hadn't decided he needed to pee too, and followed. He hadn't. All right. So I'm going to stop there. That was some really, really great progress. Okay, I just wanted to make that distinguishing mark so I can get back there. Awesome. So first off, so we made some pretty good progress there. I really want to know what's going to happen with this asteroid. I like really want to know what's going to happen with this asteroid. So first off, Eli, really great setup, by the way, my friend. Really, really great setup. Once again, I continue to be impressed by your use of description, and the pacing for the scene worked really well. Mhm. Awesome. So really, really great work, my friend. What I really loved the most about that, I would say I loved let's see, I would say the character development is awesome. We love this little young Roger Pinafore, or not, but this young Roger because he's been adopted. And I love that you have this theme with this first prologue chapter of he's trying to impress his new dad who adopted him. And I think that's actually very interesting. It goes into his it could be a mix, maybe his immaturity or his himself as a character, which I love. It gives a very clear stake, even though they're just going on this like stargazing thing. It makes the stakes bigger for the character. So that was awesome. We don't get too much sense of the world building, but I don't think that's too much of the focus. You could tell that the focus of this first prologue is heavily character development. Now I know with what we've talked about before, I have a feeling what the ending is. So I have a feeling that it's going to transition to the world building. But so far from what we read, the character development was awesome. Dialogue was great. They were saying all the right things. The plot, yeah, I mean, this works in the overall plot. I think actually right now that the biggest thing that's actually holding you back in this section is less the story itself, and it's more structure and grammar. So there's a couple opportunities of head hopping which need to be addressed. So there's a little bit of head hopping, and then there's a little bit of just tuning down some of the descriptions. And the tuning down the descriptions is a little bit more editing. I would say from like the quality of this piece so far, Eli, it's probably almost ready to be edited. In all honesty, it's at that point where it's probably ready for an alpha beta reader or an editor because the where this current draft is at, it's just very well put together. So I would say with that being said, let's hop into some of the things that I noticed and some things that stood out. I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, awesome. I was glad I was able to get to that part. I really want to read the asteroid part now. Like, I really want to see the asteroid part. But I'm biased because I know a little bit more of the story. I really do want to read the asteroid part. Yep. Once again, and for those of you who remember the other sections of Eli's story, Eli's always is really, really what's the right way is really awesome at word choice. Eli always has a really great skill with the way that he weaves words together. Awesome. So let's get into this. All right. So clearly we've set up the world. It's very straightforward that we're in May 6th, May of 2009. Awesome. And we've set up all the things, which is fine. Tonight was the night he'd impress his dad. So you made it very clear from the beginning what his intention was. So the goal is that he'd practice programming the camera and calculated where it was supposed to be. He thought of everything and his father would recognize that. He grimaced satisfaction, looked up. His breath wasn't the only thing he could see out there that night. In the sky overhead were more stars than Roger had ever seen. I think from something like this, leave the warmth. I decided it was so cold. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like this could be edited down a little bit, but I think it all feels impactful. I would almost recommend actually, instead of starting with the cold and the weather, I would make it so much stronger and start with the sentiment of tonight was the night he was going to impress his dad. Not necessarily this sentence, but I think that would actually make the start of this a little stronger. I would start with his goal because that's just interesting, and then give the layout of what's going on. I think that would just make the opening paragraph more impactful. So I like the back and forth between him and Gerald, the dad, which is interesting. Okay, open with the feeling and the cold. And I think it's less because of the feeling, but it's more from the reader. I think you want to pull them in with a hook. And I think that's just a stronger hook than it was cold outside. Like, okay, there's nothing exciting about it being cold. But there is something exciting about tonight was the night he was going to impress his new dad. The only thing I'm not clear on is how long it's been since he was adopted. It sounds like it's been relatively recent, but I'm not sure. So that's just a point of I don't know if that matters too much, but I know that would just be more interesting opening. Let's see his breathing. So at okay, and so something with the dad, and this I think this goes into Eli. I'm not sure how long has it been since he was adopted. Is this like a brand new thing? And I could have missed it because it was a live reading, but was it something where he was just adopted, or was it something where it's been a couple years, but it's still trying to get the right vibe? Because I think what I would want to see a little bit more established would be some Gerald's relationship with the son. And what I'm saying by that is I kind of want there to be like a level of maybe some type of joke or some type of lightheartedness. I love that he's helping Roger, which is great, but I almost want Gerald to maybe crack some type of joke or do things to try to make Roger feel more comfortable. He does it after the fact. When Roger falls, he does it and he eases him, which is great. I want to get something like that in the beginning. I love the Milky Way. This is so cool. The Milky Way, now you see why they called it that, huh, son? Yeah, I now you see why they called it that. I wouldn't have Gerald do like maybe some type of like quick maybe history lesson if he's more like a history buff, give him some type of joke, but it's something that I want to have see immediate rapport between Gerald and and Roger beyond him just being the dad. Yeah, I can clear it up a bit. It's been a few years of him living with them. Not sure if he got adopted right away after going there as a foster. Okay, cool. So I think then just clearing up how long it's been because you have to think about it, right? If he was just adopted within like the year, it's going to be awkward still. If it's been a few years, then they should have a rapport already. Even if it's still not there, Gerald probably has an understanding. Gerald probably knows that Roger's intent on trying to impress him. So Gerald, knowing that Gerald probably knows that as the dad, he's probably going to try to make light or help ease Roger's tension if they've been together for a few years now, right? So I think that's just something to think through. And I think how what is the types of things that Gerald would do to make Roger feel more at ease. So beyond him saying the Milky Way, would his response be of like, okay, well, here's a little history lesson. Oh, that's interesting. Here's a joke. Let's diffuse it. Here is, oh, or maybe a compliment. I think there's a couple of different ways you could go about it. But I really want to establish the impact of the son and the dad immediately because that's so important to this prologue. But once again, Eli, your descriptions are awesome. So many stars. It looked like a soup of light that flowed into and through the dark of the night in fine ripples like Damascene steel. Now, I don't actually know what Damascene steel is, but this is actually a very good example of a descriptive word. Even though I don't know specifically what this word is, some readers will, some readers won't. I still understand what's going on, right? I can imagine the night sky, the stars, and the ripples very, very well. So I think that's actually very, very well done. Very, very great job. Okay, I can lean more into the individual relationship between them and show Gerald is aware of him more earlier. Later on, he really does do some father of the year, but I can try to get it. Okay, so then if that's the case, Eli, then maybe what Gerald does in the beginning is he tries to do something like he cracks a joke, but it doesn't work. So maybe we see Gerald try to do something, right? So if he's going to do something really awesome in the end, then in the beginning, we want to see him maybe try to do something. And I think that would make it as a sooner build up. I know, right? Right. It's a really, really pretty word choice. Let's see, Dad. I think I see it. I want to look. This is okay. So I'm just thinking of this because I think this is probably like a paragraph where there's just an opportunity to just cut it down and just make it more concise. So I'm asking myself what's going on in this paragraph. He's looking at the stars. The star description is awesome. I want to take a look. Then he wants to look at the stars, and then it's then the what's it called, the scope. It was big and cumbersome, not like a spy scope. The telescope, and then the description of the telescope. Both were really. So Gerald was also carrying a big battery bank. Okay, so we have four different things going on in this paragraph. I think either it just needs to be cut down for brevity or broken up into different paragraphs. Only because we're accomplishing a lot, right? Description of the sky, description of the sky, wanting to look at the sky, description of the telescope, and then description of the battery bank that Gerald's carrying. So you're accomplishing a lot. Break the paragraph up. That's my suggestion. And yeah, I would say break the paragraph up, and then the description of the telescope is great. We could probably just cut down on brevity, edit it down a little bit. Once again, like I said, Eli, like overall what you're doing with it is really well. I think it just needs to be edited down. I think it just needs line editing more than anything. Like everything makes sense, everything's clear. I understand what it is, but I think as I think about what is the point of the character journey in this prologue, the point is Roger wants to impress his dad. So anything outside of Roger wanting to impress his dad is like a minimal in comparison to it's all about Roger wants to impress his dad, since that's really the focus. And it's the real focus is Roger and the dad, that relationship. So anything that doesn't further that feeling, that sentiment, that emotion is just not necessarily unnecessary. It's just not as impactful. And especially because it's a prologue, like I'm going way more into this, Eli, because it's a prologue. You don't want a chance losing your reader. This is like the first hint at the story. So you really want to get that emotional moment and you want the reader to care as much as possible. The only way you make the reader care is if you dig into that emotional impact of Roger really has to impress his dad, because that's what really stands out right now, which is awesome. The descriptions are nice, and interweaving the descriptions is really fun. Right. So it's like the telescope stuff is interesting. All this telescope stuff is interesting, but I think like this, all the description, this can be cut down to like two sentences. It's just not super important. And I think it's in like 2 pages. You go back into the description of the telescope as it pertains to him then being adopted. So you could literally like cut this, move it to that section. so that way we can get into him wanting to impress his dad. I think what we need to know is that he has a big telescope, it was a present, and his dad is carrying a battery pack. I think that seems to be the important parts. And this is good. So this is set up. Roger tried to stop, yank the telescope upwards. Okay, and then this is him falling. He lay still for a second, grateful that it was dark out. So this is actually really good. The fact that he falls and he is so embarrassed. And I think this creates a really cute moment. Like, I love this, makes me love Roger as a character because it's like, oh, he just wants to impress he's like he's this young kid. As a side note, I don't know how old Roger is, but I mean, for getting first straight A's last year, my guess is, I don't know, maybe middle school. Yeah, my guess is maybe middle school. It's like maybe preteen, early teenager. So just as a side note, I don't have a concept of how old he is. Other than that, he's a kid. I don't think it actually matters too much, but just something to be aware of. But this thing is cool. I can get it. Let's see, Roger catching the foot of one of his legs of his telescope on the cuff of his pants. He yanked the telescope upwards to loose it from its tangle, and it took the cuff of his pants with it and pulled him off his feet. He hit the ground hard and felt the air forced out of his lungs by the impact. Great description. Great description. I think this section, once again, can just be edited down a little bit. Just a little bit of line editing. Because essentially what's happening is Roger's trying to, he's like, hey, I can get it. He tries to wrench the telescope and it basically trips him up. Right. So I want to get to the moment of him hitting the ground because that's the emotional moment of this. But then this is cute. He lay still for a second, grateful that it was dark out and his father wouldn't see his reddening face. That's beautiful. And then like this, he could literally like, he lay for it grateful because that's clear. And then you could literally like cut this portion and then move it to his, I would say you could even do it his next. So I'll do that. Let's go edit suggesting. You could cut this because we've already established this. And then before he had the chance, his father was in front of him, his hand outstretched to help him back to his feet. I would even say that before, yeah. Yep, I would do that because then we can he has this moment of embarrassment. Now we move to the next action of his dad's handout. And then this was a case of head hopping, Eli. That's it. The only thing with this setup, and you do this twice, but you do this right now, this description about Gerald feels like you, the narrator, trying to talk to the reader. Because right now, the point of view character is Roger. Yep. So Roger is the point of view character. And then we have this description about Gerald Pinafore. So why would if Roger thinks about his dad, and I guess this is like maybe it needs clarification, right? Is this how Roger perceives his dad? Gerald Pinafore was a willowy thin sort of reed of a man. He had fine copper colored hair that lay down straight in nice little rows and neatly trimmed, like 57 years old. So like this, once again, this is all good stuff. Like it's very well written. It's great description. I love it. It just doesn't make sense for this moment if we're in Roger's point of view and he's looking up at his dad. Now, if he's looking up at his dad, like I think you could do this, you can do a version of this, but you have to remember you're keeping it from Roger's point of view. His dad put his arm out and he looked up at his Dick Van Dyke beard. And he thought, people always said his dad, Gerald Pinafore, was a willy thin sort of reed of a man. And then you could do like a version of that. But right now it just feels like the narrator. Right now this just feels too much like the narrator. So I would just something to be aware of that we're sticking to Roger's POV. Yep. And this is great because you're aware that you're setting up that how long it had been since Roger was adopted. I think you just need to adjust this to Roger's POV. You could switch to Gerald's POV, like if that's important for this portion, because you've technically already made it clear that Roger is about saving about trying to impress his dad, you could change the POV to Gerald, right? You could do a line break easily and go, where is my asterisk? You could do something like that, right? You could change the POV if that's important for the story. If it's more important for Gerald to be the POV character. But if it's going to be Roger, then stick it with Roger. But this is all good in his birth parents. And then you're kind of setting up the adoption portion, which is great. And he couldn't stand the thought of breaking the nice things a Pinafore had given to him. I think the telescope stuff, you've kind of already gone into the telescope. If you delete that section earlier, then put it here. If you do the telescope stuff earlier, then keep it there. Because now this is kind of going into more like the adoption bit. So I would say keep the section to the adoption bit. But it's interesting. I like it. Like, once again, this is all good stuff to know. Started to twist the telescope off. He started to twist the telescope off and start the whole brouhaha over. I don't even know what that means. I don't know if that was a word mistake or if that's something specific for the character. Over, but Gerald left his hand on the boy's shoulder. But I mean, once again, this makes me think that you've switched to Gerald's point of view. So if you switch to Gerald's point of view, then okay, maybe this is like just his type of language that he uses. And I like this because this makes me think that we are in we are in Gerald's point of view now, because now he's thinking about the boy's biological parents. This is good. So like, it does make me think we've switched to Gerald's POV. Because once again, I think this is Gerald as well. The Pinafores both had short. They must have looked nothing like the Pinafores. The Pinafores both had short, squat sorts of faces. Rogers was long as a horse. Olivia had the same straight, fine copper-colored hair as her husband. Rogers' hair was tangled. So this is good. I don't think Olivia is important right now. I'm going to be honest. I know Olivia is the mom, and I think you reference her in a sentence, but right now, keep us thinking about Roger and Gerald. That's the only thing that matters. Now, I think if we're in Gerald's point of view, Gerald looking down at Roger's like tangled hair, I think this is interesting. I think you give Roger's description. I think that's great. I think it would definitely work better. I think if you choose to keep the POV to Gerald at this section, maybe you can like switch back and forth. You just have to make it clear that you're switching back and forth. But yeah, overall, I'm loving it. And this is cute. We've got my telescope in case anything did get broken, so don't go tossing yourself back on the ground over it. This tells me that Gerald obviously knows that Roger is very clearly upset about trying to impress him, or about breaking his telescope, or about whatever happened. So I think this is a very cute moment. This is such a great moment. I absolutely love this. And it's once again, so like the description is interesting somehow. So we're getting some really fun description again, but I would once again I would shorten it. I mean, okay. The description is awesome. It's very, very well. It's very well put. It's well worded. It's well done. I would just minimize the descriptions a little bit, because we want to get to the asteroid bit, or we want to get to something that's furthering the Roger Gerald plot line. Especially because this is a prologue. The reader is thinking like, okay, so Roger trying to impress the dad. They're going to go see some type of asteroid. So I want to get to one of those, so you don't chance losing the reader. I can cut out some of the flowery. Yeah. And once again, like, your descriptions are great, Eli. It's just cutting down on it. Yeah. So, and I think really what it is it's this portion. Once we've gotten over this first section of him falling on the ground, the next portion is really the setup for the asteroid. So I think what's important is, how do we get to this asteroid moment sooner? Because I think that's what the transition looks like. It's now, we're now about get to the asteroid. What's this thing going to look like? And I think that's looks like that's what's important in this next moment. And then further establishing Gerald and Roger's dynamic. You said, I know you mentioned that Gerald's going to do something like some cool father moments at the end. So it looks like we're probably doing some build up to that. Yeah, and that's another really, 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 really great call out. Keeping in mind that it is the prologue and people are going to be like, get to chapter one. Dopamine, please. I will keep that in mind. Yeah, and I think that's important, Eli. So like if you think about this, I mean, yeah, so we basically got to the end of this, but let's see. When we think, so I think this whole thing is the prologue. Yeah, so my guess is this whole thing is a prologue. Now this is all what 25. I literally blew up. Let's go Georgia. Let's bring it back to the normal font just to give it. So 12 normal font. Let's see, would it still be? It'd probably be 1.5 would be closer. So as a prologue in a piece of writing, so this is about 12 pages. I think that the goal should be to make it like 5 to 10 in all honesty, because you want to think about what the prologue is serving, and it's right now serving Roger's setup and it's serving the world. So I would say the goal should be to get this prologue down to a 5 to 10 page. It's like 5,000 words. Okay. So like word count, it's not horrible. But yeah, I would just get it a little shorter if possible. You want to make prologues as concise as possible because like you said, readers have expectations of wanting to get to chapter one. Yeah, that's what I think as well. I think if it's Gerald's POV at that section, I think then the thing about Roger's parents would work. I think it actually does work that you can go from Roger to Gerald's POV, and you can switch back and forth. You just have to set up that you're switching the POVs. You can do that. You just have to be clear about the setup so you don't lose the reader. Corny. You said my prologue was too long too, and it's 2,500 words. Yeah, well, I mean, because like, all right, so we talk about prologues often, and I know we've gone into this debate before, but you guys want to think about it from this perspective, right? Why does your story need a prologue? Why not just start at chapter one? People bought the story to read the story. Now, a lot of times the prologue is designed to set up some type of world building, to set up some type of plot. For fantasy novels, like I know fantasy series, a prologue is generally designed to set up the overarching story. Perfect example is Game of Thrones. The opening prologue is set up to introduce the Night King and the idea of the White Walkers. That is the only reason that the prologue exists. Introduce the White Walkers. It shows the characters going through the snowy field, and we get the introduction to the wall, to Beyond the Wall. But we're going to explore that in the story itself. That's not important. The one thing that prologue serves is the White Walkers, which we really don't go back to that core story until book 4, 5, or 6. So I always try to think about of like the prologue. What is the thing that the prologue is trying to accomplish? Get to that point sooner, because otherwise you have the reader questioning, what is the point of the prologue, right? And if you feel like they've got an experience and they're like, okay, cool, wow, I now have a setup. I have a little bit of setup of the world. I'm intrigued. Now let's start with the story. So absolutely. Yeah, well, to be fair, my book is going to be long as hell, so I know if you're expecting that. But yeah, Eli also does have a very, very long. I know you have plans to make it very long, so I think that's also another factor to take into consideration as well, Eli. Absolutely, good call out. Yeah, my prologue introduces the asteroid and Roger and gives us motivation for the entire tale. It doesn't come back till the end, as you know, Jared. That's why I chose the prologue, not chapter one. Yeah, and I agree. I think because Roger and he doesn't come back till the end, and I think because Roger's not involved in the core story itself, I think the Roger motivation is interesting. The Roger and Gerald thing is interesting, but I think the core goal of it should be the asteroid. I think the asteroid is the core goal because that should be the greater focus. With asteroid being focus number one, Roger dad relationship sub focus number two. And I think those are the two things should be achieved. So any sentence description that does not serve asteroid, Roger and Gerald should not be there. I think that would be a good way to think about it, my friend. But yeah, good luck. Good luck on the work. I hope that helped out a little bit. I already love the story. I still think that Zekung is my favorite character. I still think that Zekung is my favorite character, but definitely looking forward to reading more, my friend. I try to keep every chapter 2,500 to 3K words to give myself room for editing, but in my genre, it isn't common for the chapters to be long. That I do know. Romance tends to do shorter chapters. Fantasy is a mix. Fantasy actually tends to be longer chapters on average, but it can be a mix. I'm less about the word count of a chapter. I don't care if a chapter is 500 words or 20 or 10,000, right? I don't care how long the chapter is. I care more about what is the thing that the chapter needs to accomplish. How is the chapter serving your core character's journey? How is it serving the plot? And that is what the chapter is. The chapters usually end on a cliffhanger or break. Sometimes it's a time break. Sometimes it's just a scene break into the next moment. But you just want to think about it. Think about less of the word counts and more about what is the goal and intent of this. Good call out. I always love talking about prologues. Now we've jumped into it before. I just think it's funny and good to notice the differences between. Yep, there's always differences. I think that's what's interesting with the WriteNow community because we get stories we get fantasy, romance, horror, thriller, animated, children's. We get all different types, and we have to recognize that every genre has different conventions. But conventions aside, the things that don't change, character development doesn't change. World building, conventions change, but you still have to build a world with settings that make sense. You have to still build a world with objects that are clear and that your characters care about. You still have to create a plot that makes sense, right? So the writing conventions don't change, but the genre conventions is what changes the way we go about creating the story. Absolutely. Could be a murder mystery. Death by prologue. All right, Mass Toaster, I think we have your next book. The book should be called Death by Prologue. And the main antagonist is actually going to be called Prologue. Oh, that's funny. The best comparison to my prologue I can think of is the X-Files movie, like the alien landing in the cave and the kid finding it. Yeah, I could totally see that. I could totally see that. It's been so long since I've seen X-Files that was a fun opening. The whole short story is only a prologue. But that's the thing, you could do that. You could actually do something like that with a prologue if you were intentional. If the goal of it was about the prologue dynamic, you could actually do that. And you could actually make fun and spoof the idea of prologues, and people would love it because you're subverting the expectation of what is a prologue. So that is something that somebody could do if they wanted to embark on that undertaking. Awesome, Sean. I will check. Yep. Summers 99 through 104. I got it. Thank you. I'll queue up your story next, my friend. Thank you for sending that over. Let's see. Let me make sure that it opens. Perfect. Yeah. All right, Sean. Yeah, I got it this time. So I think that should open up now. Perfect. Wonderful. Awesome. Excellent. All right, Sean. Yeah. So I'll queue up your story next, then, my friend. We'll go back to Summer's Reign in just a second. So where was I at? Perfect. And by the way, Matto, welcome to the stream. So you've actually come to our Saturday story and critique show. So on Saturdays, or on every other Saturday, depending on my month, we actually do live readings and critiques from writers in the community. I'm curious if you're a writer. I love your logo, but I love your profile pic, by the way. It makes me think something like Nightmare Before Christmas or like Dark Tales or that type of vibe. A draft man. What is a draft man? I'm curious. Let's see. You said you're a draft man. It's from a game. A guy who draws. Oh, okay, okay, awesome. I'm like, what is a draft man? Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and by the way, if you want to get feedback on your story, so it's also I see you're over on Twitch. So let me drop the story submission link again. If you ever want feedback on your story, here's the story submission link for those of you who ever want to submit, whether you want to submit for today's show or submit for future shows. I try to get through as many as I can. On average, I get through about 4 to 6 stories in a show, depending on the depth of the stories. We accept books, scripts. I would be willing to accept a game script. That'd be super fun. I've done graphic novels. We do all genres from horror, mystery, fantasy, children's, because the core storytelling itself does not change. Yep, you could absolutely do comics. We could totally do that, because with comics, I actually just work with the client on a comic that they're developing. The difference is, like, you still need the script for the character arc. You just have to line it up with the different panels that you're achieving to show the visual form. So absolutely. So I just dropped that. I just dropped that down in the link. If you ever want to submit, you should absolutely submit for feedback. It's super fun. Let's see. The aliens, the alien scream in the X-Files movie still haunts my dreams. Oh, it cracks me up. Thanks for the feedback, y'all. I'll probably tackle most of it on a redraft after formal editing. Appreciate your times and thoughts. Yeah, Eli, you're a really great writer. You're a really, really great writer, my friend. Good luck with the next part, with the next draft. I also love the story. I always love the stories, but also I'm loving the stories today. We're getting a nice range of stories today. We're getting a very, very nice range. We started off with, let's say, we started off with what was that? We started off with that romance. We started off with horror and romance, and then we did fantasy mystery, and then we just did this one was like a little more heartfelt. I know this is sci-fi, but this portion of it was not as sci-fi-ish. But yeah, so we're getting a really nice mix actually, which is cool. I always love it because then you get to kind of hear different genres. The best prologue was the one in UP. Ooh, oh, and Up. Up is for animated movies. The prologue in Up is one of the most heartwarming prologues that for a Pixar movie. It was so heartwarming. Oh, it's great when you can do a prologue and you can do it in a way that's heartwarming because it immediately pulls the reader in. And then it makes you feel for this old man. He's at the end of his life. The love of his life is dead, and now he still has a journey to go on. And I think that's what's beautiful. That's one of the reasons that the Up movie was so clever. Oh, absolutely. I've read the first 4. Oh, yeah, all the GOT prologues were great. I think the Game of Thrones prologues is a great example of how to do a prologue while setting up for the rest for the overall series. The prologue for the first book was the well done. I forgot what the prologues for the rest of the books were because it's been a while since I've read them. So it depends what you have. It depends what you have available. If you already have the comic, like let's say you're in like a final draft or you're farther along, you already have the comic with the words and the images, you can always just send that along. A lot of the times what we see, Meadow, is we see a lot of writers who are earlier on in the writing process in terms like they're generally in the rough draft or in the second draft. So then they'll usually send the script for the words itself, and then they don't always have the images yet. It kind of just depends on where you're at in the process. Yeah, so it just depends how far along you're at. If you have the comic, great. I finished a short comic. Sweet. Yeah, definitely send it along. That'd be awesome. Absolutely. That'd definitely be really awesome. Yeah, if you have the comic finished already, you can send that. I include a link for on the submission form. You can submit it as either a link if it's like a Google Docs link, or you can upload it as a file. On the submission form, there's a link for you to upload it in the submission form itself. Great question. I know Up was so devastating. Up was such like once again heartwarming movie. What a way to do a cute, heartwarming animated movie. because it really touches on life and death. That's really why, because it touches on the shortness of life, of which that's a core human thing that every person can resonate with. That's a reason that Up did very well. And then thinking that you're at the end of your life, and no, you're actually just at the beginning of a new journey. And I think that's why it's so cute. So everyone's like, all right, everyone likes the prologue, and then the rest of the movie just sucks. Second one is Crescent. He's worrying about Melisandre and sees the comet. That's right, because the comet is a central. I mean, once again, it's world building, right? So technically, what the second book of Game of Thrones does, it's setting up the world building for the book. The first book sets up world building for the series, which is interesting. Awesome. I'll look forward to it. And excellent. So before we hop into Sean's, let's see, where were we at? So before we hop into Sean's, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I'm here every day with the Right Now community, 250 plus streams and counting, and we got more to come. We have some events we have coming up over the next couple months. We have a fiction contest, which is coming up. More details coming soon. We're going to be hosting the very first Right Now fiction contest. More details. We got a spooky vibe, so we'll be releasing more details in the weeks to come. We have another website review stream coming up. We'll be having another epic 6-hour write-a-thon will be on the horizon as well. We got something. We're going to be trying something fun for NaNoWriMo. And yeah, we are at the YouTube channel right now is at 450 something subscribers. I have made this promise to you again. When we hit 500 subscribers, as a milestone, I will launch the Right Now Discord channel. I will launch the very first Discord channel for the Right Now community so we can all connect on our writing outside of the live streams. So help me get to 500. Help us push to 500. We're getting there. We're getting close. We're less than 50 away, and we seem to grow by about anywhere between 50 to 80 subs a month. So go subscribe. I appreciate you. All right, beautiful. And ready for Sean's. Excellent. Beautiful. Oh, thanks so much, Matto. I appreciate you. Welcome to the community, by the way, my friend. All right, perfect. So, oh, that's not pretty. Okay, there we go. So we got Sean's is all set up. All right, so we're going back into a script with Sean. So for those of you who've missed out on the previous versions of Sean's script, Summer Rain. So Summer Rain is a really fun story we've been getting into. Let's see, let's go into here. I just saw you uploaded that. Perfect. So Summer Rain. After cracking a major city case, Officer Wallace and his two sons seek rural solace. But when a local mystery arises, he's forced to confront his own secrets, unraveling a tangled web that threatens both his new life and personal demons. So we have had a lot of fun reading the script. We're at the climax right now. So we're about to have some probably epic reveals with the evil antagonist, Miss Summers, our little old lady with an impactful and a crazy little old lady. So we've gone through quite a lot. In the last scene, I know we had just had, what was that? Billy was finally confronting the evil Miss Summers with the boys are somewhere in the house and drugged. His partner, the asshole, the other partner, Nick, is walking through the house trying to find coming across something to do with his former cop partner who died mysteriously sometime before. So, all right, let's see if we let's see what we learn on this part of the journey. Begin flashback. Exterior convenience store night. Billy sits in his cruiser as he listens to dispatch. He watches two men stand outside talking. He flips on his sirens and pulls out of the darkness towards the two men. One runs, one stands his ground. Billy exits the car with his gun drawn on the man remaining. Interior Wallace's old house, garage, night. Billy pulls the car into the garage. The garage door lowers as Billy exits the vehicle. Billy pops the trunk of the car, revealing the man from the convenience store tied up and gagged. He struggles to get out of his bindings. Diana opens the door from the garage to the house. Happy to see Billy, she smiles as she walks towards him, a butcher knife in hand. When she arrives at the trunk of the cruiser, she begins chopping and stabbing at the man in the trunk multiple times. Interior Wallace's old house, dining room. Billy and Diana sat at the table. Candlelight fills the dining room as they sit across from each other eating dinner. Diana picks up the red stained plates as she and Billy share a kiss. She takes a couple of steps towards the kitchen and stops. Her body stiffens, then begins to shake, falling face first to the ground. The plates smash on the floor, breaking into pieces. Billy turns to see her laying on the ground, convulsing. Blood begins to pool around her hair. He wails as he lifts her head onto his lap, vomit leaking from the sides of her mouth. Billy cries continue as he lays Diana on the ground. He runs over to the kitchen table, looking around for his cell phone. Diana's body relaxes as she takes her last breath. Billy stares down at Diana's lifeless body through his tears. He kneels down beside her and places her head back into his lap. Interior Wallace's old house, foyer hallway night. The babysitter, a 27-year-old clean-cut black man, opens the front door and follows both Brad and Eric inside. The two boys drop their coats on the floor and head down the hallway towards the kitchen. The babysitter racks up their coats and hangs them on the coat rack. Sorry, we're home early. The movie was sold out. Interior Wallace's old home, kitchen continuous. As the babysitter turns the corner in the kitchen, he sees Diana's bloody hair resting on Billy's lap. The two boys stand over their parents in shock. The babysitter looks up to see a naked corpse hanging upside down, a bucket just below catching all the blood draining from the lifeless body. Slices of his thighs are missing, exposing bone, while blood leaks from the multiple stab wounds in his chest. The babysitter turns and runs down the hallway towards the front door. A gunshot enters his back as he falls to the ground, as he falls to the floor. Billy stands pointing a gun where the babysitter once stood. Billy falls to the ground screaming, his gun dropping onto the floor. Brad and Eric stand in the kitchen, their eyes switching from their anguished father to their lifeless mother. Billy stands and walks slowly towards his kids. He gazes at Diana's body as we end flashback. Oh, man. Interior, Miss Summers' home, kitchen, night. Billy stands staring at Miss Summers' lifeless body on her kitchen floor. Interior, Miss Summers' home, master bedroom, night. As Nick lays on the floor, writhing in pain, the boys descend from the attic and climb over his body. Wait! I'm here with your father. I'm his partner. I'm one of the good guys. Brad and Eric stop. They look at Nick, doubled up in pain on the floor. Nick composes himself as he gets up to his feet. Let's get you boys out of here. Interior Miss Summers' home, kitchen, night. Billy stands over Miss Summers' body. As he looks down the hallway, Nick turns the corner, coming down the staircase. He has both Brad and Eric with him. Billy drops the knife as the kids run towards him. Nick stays where he is, letting the family reunite. After hugging his boys, Billy stands. He gives Nick a heartfelt look. I think they'll be all right. Thank you. My pleasure. Nick walks towards the kitchen and sees Miss Summers lying on the floor. I can't believe I didn't figure it out. She conned me. All of us. This must have been the league Garcia was talking about. I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? You didn't do anything but take out another serial killer. Nick walks past Billy to attend Miss Summers' body. As he walks by, Billy pulls Nick's gun from the holster. Billy, what are you doing? What did she tell you? What did who tell me? Miss Summers. What did she tell you about me? Billy, nothing. She didn't tell me anything. She told me that she told you. What did she tell you? I swear to God, Billy, she said nothing to me about you. What would she have told me? Billy watches as a confused look crosses Nick's face. Okay. Billy raises the gun and shoots Nick in the head. Damn. Billy raises the gun and shoots Nick in the head. Nick collapses dead before he hits the ground. Boys, we have to move fast. We don't have much time. Help me get them in Miss Summers' car. Brad, I'm going to want you to drive the car home and park in the garage. Can you do that? Yes. Call me when you get home. My phone is still dead. Damn it. Miss Summers' grandson has a charger in his room. Okay, take Miss Summers, pointing to Nick. I'll be back to help with him. Billy runs down the hall. As he gets to the bottom of the stairs, Brad yells at him, Dad, the car keys in the bowl. Billy stops, grabs the keys, and tosses them to Brad. Before the keys reach Brad's fingers, Billy is already running upstairs. Interior Miss Summers' home, upstairs hallway at night. Billy quickly walks past the master bedroom and looks inside, catching a glimpse of Officer Garcia. Jesus Christ, Cynthia. Interior Miss Summers' home, grandson's bedroom continuous. Billy enters the bedroom of Miss Summers' late grandson and starts rifling through the drawers, finding nothing. He sees the charger plugged in the wall socket and pulls it out of the wall. As he turns to leave, he sees the open laptop on the desk with the frozen video of him and his boys leaving his house after his wife's death. The article of David Allen Gore still open in a chrome window. Billy realizes how Miss Summer figured out his past. Billy shuts the laptop, puts it under his arm, and heads back downstairs. Interior Miss Summers' home kitchen continuous. Billy turns the corner in the kitchen. Nick's body is no longer laying on the floor. Grunts can be heard coming from behind the kitchen door leading to the garage. Interior Miss Summers' home, garage continuous. Billy walks in the garage towards the audible strained voices. As he walks to the back of Miss Summers' car, he sees both boys putting Nick's body in the trunk. Billy closes the trunk with Nick's body laying on top of Miss Summers. As Brad gets behind the wheel of Miss Summers' car, Eric enters from the passenger side. Billy hands the phone charger to Brad, who plugs into the USB port on the dash, then connecting it to his phone. Billy tosses a laptop in the back seat. I love you both. I love you. We love you too, Dad. Billy watches as Brad pulls the car out of the garage and drives down the street. As he shuts off the light in the garage, he heads back inside. Interior Miss Summers' home, kitchen night. Billy takes the receiver of the phone off the cradle on the wall and lays on the floor. He punches in 911 before grabbing his stabbed shoulder. 911, what is your emergency? Officer down! Officer down! Man. Wow. All right. First off, Sean, I just have to say, wow, what an excellent climactic scene. Wow. I even know in the reading, I was caught by surprise. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. We have gone on this journey with Billy and Nick, only to have Nick killed in the final climactic scene, especially by his partner. Wow, 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 wow. So Nick was wow, and I just have to say, first off, Sean, that was incredible. Very, very nicely well done climax. Clearly, it's still not finished. We're probably technically still in the middle of the climax, probably near the end, technically. And now, like, I have to go back and think because technically, Billy is the protagonist, so it's really an anti-hero story. So so Billy's an anti-hero then. This is essentially like when we think of movies like Secret Window or when we think of movies like Shutter Island, where technically the hero is the villain. They're actually the ones who've done all the things. But the reason we don't know they're a villain is because of a lack of withholding information from the narrator. But it's interesting. It's really well done. Yeah, because technically Billy is both the hero and the villain of the story. We've been led to believe that Miss Summers was the villain of the story. Yeah, and I'm just like, I think what the questions I have right now is like, okay, so like what happens next? Because of the threads that have been set, there's technically one loose thread that, well, technically okay, so there's three loose threads that come to mind. There is the neighbor's wife still thinks things are suspicious, which we haven't resolved that. There's also the how Miss Summers figured out Billy's past. And that I'm not too clear on. I figure there's something there. And then there is what's going to happen with Billy and the sons. So clearly you thought the sons were just these innocent sons, but based off this scene, then it seems like the sons actually know what's going on and they're actually involved in the crime itself, which is interesting. That's very intriguing. I didn't expect. I didn't think that the sons were going to be so incorporated in it, which is awesome. So I think that was a really great strategy. And then Sean, it looks like Maddow had a great question here. So during the convenience store in the beginning, was there a Twin Peaks reference there? I could have totally seen that. Twin Peaks is a really fun story, by the way. The man from the convenience store. If there was like a Twin Peaks reference there. So Twin Peaks was fun. Let's see. And wow. Okay. So let's get into the meat of it. So I have 3 questions right now. Let's see what works. So Billy, oh, Diana, you need to set up Diana's character. I have no clue who Diana is. I get it. Like okay, she was the wife once we get here. But in terms of the flashback, because I don't think you've set up Diana's character previously. I don't remember. Yeah, I was like, I think Diana's referenced, but I don't think I think this is the first time she's set up. If I'm wrong, I could have just forgotten, but Diana needs to be introduced as a character. So that would be the one thing for Diana. And then what else? She is in all the dream sequences. Gotcha. I like vaguely recall some of the dream sequences. All right, if that's the case, then don't worry about it. You probably set her up earlier in the script then. That's fine. Like I knew she was the wife. I was like, I think she's the wife, but yeah. Okay, so then I think if I understand what's going on, and sure, kiss. She takes a couple of steps and stops. Okay, so I think what's not clear now is how did she die? Well, okay, Billy and Diana sit at the table, and candlelight fills the dining room as they sit across from each other eating dinner. So my guess is Billy poisoned Diana. Okay, so essentially, Billy and Diana are a Bonnie and Clyde type of dynamic where they're a duo, they're a love duo, they're a serial killing duo. Interesting. So they are a serial killing duo. Are they eating the guy from the store flesh? So they're cannibals. Wait, I'm like Billy pulls. Diana opens the door from the garage. Okay, yep. Okay, that makes more sense. So happy to see Billy. She smiles. She walks towards him. Okay, so they're cannibals. They're serial killers, and the reason they're serial killers is because cannibalization is their thing. Okay, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. And then I see, like, I'm thinking of it from the visual perspective of like, okay, like that's very easy to show on screen. I think that makes sense. Okay. All right. So from this flashback, as he listens to dispatch, all right, so this is the convenience store, and then this is him pulling into the garage. And then I think so we have a couple big reveals in the stream sequence, which I think need to be further established to make them have more of an oh shit moment. So in this, the oh shit moment in here is that Diana is also part of when she arrives at the trunk of the cruiser, she begins chopping and stabbing at the man in the trunk. So I think this is the first oh shit moment. Oh, Diana is also a serial killer. And so before this, we were like, okay, Billy was potentially the serial killer. I forgot the name, the Dayton Devil. Okay, so we've already learned that. Now in this, oh, okay, they were both in it. Interesting. Begins chopping and stabbing at the man in the trunk. Diana opens the door from the garage to the house, happy to see Billy. She smiles as she walks towards him, a butcher knife in hand. I think I would just make this its own thing. Diana arrives at the trunk of the cruiser. And I think this is partially a readability thing because I just want to make this moment stand out. Diana arrives at the trunk of the cruiser and begins chopping and stabbing at the man in the trunk. So make that clear that she is also part of it. So make that just its own moment. That is cool. And then the house itself. So we don't know about the cannibalism until the next scene. So in this scene, Diana is also a serial killer. Great, they're in it together. Now this scene is them eating. Billy and Diana sit at a table at each other eating dinner. Diana picks up the red stained plates as she and Billy share a kiss. She takes a couple steps towards the kitchen. And okay, so it's right now, it's not clear that they're eating the man. So far, it's clear that they were chopping and stabbing him up, right? That was clear. But so far, the cannibalism portion of it isn't clear. So what I would suggest doing is, Sean, start off the first scene. Use the same. I would actually reference a really good script to reference would actually be the Hannibal Lecter, the TV show. Because that, like, his thing is doing like cannibal scenes. That is a great script to reference. And how do they reveal cannibal type scenes? I would open this with a description of a piece of meat on the plate. You could go a couple different directions about it. You could be that it looks like a normal piece of food and it's fully cooked. Something stands out, or you could have them say something, but that should be the opening moment of this to introduce that they are cannibals. So that should be the first thing, and then go to them dining, however you want to tackle that. I wanted to surprise the audience when the babysitter sees the victim. Okay, so if you wanted to withhold that one, that's fine. Then let's get to that. That's fine. It might not have been clear, but I could have missed it. Okay, so let's keep going. Kitchen and stops, the plate smash. Okay, so right now, then something happens to Diana. Sean, is it supposed to be clear why Diana dies? Is it supposed to be clear yet why Diana is dead? Right now, then my guess is she's either dead because she's a cannibal and she's eating human flesh, or she's dead because Billy killed her and he poisoned her. Those are the two things that I'm just not clear about yet. If we are supposed to know why she died, make it clear. If you're still withholding it because you don't want to reveal it yet, then don't reveal it yet. I would get rid of him running for the cell phone because I think that takes out the moment of what's happening. I would get rid of the cell phone moment and literally just have him stay laying there holding Diana's lifeless body as she stares at him and looking at her with her last breath. So I would get rid of that. Okay, we are not supposed to know, but I want it to be clear that Billy did not poison her. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then if that's the case, then awesome. So we don't know why she's actually died yet. Then maybe it's a health reason, or maybe it's because she's a cannibal. So we still haven't learned that yet, which is fine. Then if that's the case, this needs to focus on Billy's despair and his surprise at her death. So the phone thing pulls us out. Just focus on him holding her as she's dying in his arms, and that will make that clear that obviously he didn't kill her. And then the babysitter. So babysitter is good. Yep. I would clarify Brad and Eric's age since this is a flashback. Opens the front door and follows both Brad and Eric, age so and so, so that we know that they're that much younger. You also have to keep, and I forgot how long does this take place before the present moment of the story starts? Is this what, like, months, or is this like a year, or is this a couple of years? I forgot, Sean. Because kids always, since they're young, kids age faster. So even if it was like 6 months or a year, their aging is going to be so different. A year. Okay, so it's been a year. Okay. Opens the front door. A 27-year-old clean cut man opens the front door and follows both Brad and Eric inside. Okay, so maybe the age isn't as important if it's been a year. Technically, the flashback. Yeah, I think you established earlier on in the script that it's been about a year. I think this is good that you introduce this through a neutral third perspective, neutral character, the babysitter, which is good. That's perfect. Good script setup. As the babysitter turns the corner of the kitchen, he sees Diana's body, bloody hair resting on Billy's lap. The two boys stand over their parents in shock. The babysitter looks up to see a naked corpse hanging upside down, a bucket just below, catching all the blood draining from the lifeless body. Slices of his thighs are missing, exposing bone, while blood leaks from the multiple stab wounds in his chest. Slices of his thighs are missing, exposing bone, while blood leaks from the multiple stab wounds in his chest. The babysitter turns and runs down the hallway towards the front door. Slices of his thigh are missing, exposing bone. So, okay, so I think with this, you just need to make it clear that they're cannibals. So, as a babysitter, and it's really just this description here. So, we see a body is basically hanging upside down. It's basically been pieces of it are skinned, missing, exposing blood, while blood leaks from his multiple stab wounds on his chest. Yeah, so I think you just need to make it clear that basically they've taken them off. They basically skinned his missing thighs to eat him. And I think you either do that by showing something on the plates, or you do that by having some sort of kitchen, some sort of cutting thing. Like maybe there's like a pound of like his, like one of it, like part of his thigh is on the counter still being cut up, or there's pieces of it. I think you just have to make that clearer, right? I think it's kind of going in that direction, but I think it's just cleaning it up. Weird conversation for cannibalism. But I mean, you think about it in the context of shows that like Hannibal Lecter, where or like I'm like Hannibal Lecter was the one where they touch cannibalism. I've seen it in horror movies every once in a while. I saw a horror movie with it. But yeah, it's just clarifying like there are people like that out there. I'm sure. I'm sure there's cannibals like that out there. So then you have to research and you have to understand like, okay, for somebody who is a cannibal, what is the normal way? Like what would that step-by-step process look like? And you have to figure out how do I show that to the audience in a way that's clear immediately. But then this makes sense. The baby shitter the baby shitter. the baby the baby shitter. Well, the baby shitter runs away and gets shot. That was clear. I would almost recommend, and because right now we're not clear on how the boys. So in the flashback, the boys are stunned, but in the moment, the boys kind of seem like they're accomplices. And I think that's not clear. Are the boys fully on board with everything? Do they just not understand the context of what they're doing? I think I would actually include in this flashback, I would include an ending moment of Billy kneeling to the boys. Because, like, why don't the boys just be like, you killed our mom, run out and call the police? Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So they're accomplices. So, like, I think this, you should show the end of the flashback of Billy kneeling down to the boys and having a moment. Because I think right now that's not clear. I think it's kind of like, okay, so they are accomplices, but my question is like, are they unwitting accomplices? Are they fully on board? Are they accomplices because they don't understand because they're young? So I think this moment, I think you need to establish that because that feels very important. And I think you should establish that with maybe a couple lines of dialogue as well. I think the moment that the boys decided, okay, you kill her or something killed her mom, why do they not assume that the dad didn't kill the mom? Right? Who do they think killed the mom? So I think there's something that needs to be established there. Now, the truth is, like, you could that might be a scene you're going to be exploring later in the script, which we haven't got into yet. But I think because it's a core emotional change in the boys, I think we do need to know. We need to understand it better simply because now we're going into them being accomplices. So, and you just want to think about you that the core thing is we need to understand why the boys are doing what they do. We understand why we're understanding why Billy is doing what he did. He's some type of serial killer as introduced previously. We don't know how Diana died yet, but that's fine. Yeah, I think the kids not thinking it was the dad helps Bill. No one would think dad would hurt mom too much love there. Yeah, I think so as well. And I think immediately, if the boys knew nothing about it, they're gonna be traumatized. What and you have to think about what age are they? So they're what, like I think they're what, both preteen at this point in time. I think the dad, Billy, needs to immediately get onto one knee and be like, kids, this is what happened. Right. I think Billy needs to they are probably in shock. They probably don't know how to respond to it. And I think this is also a great moment to show maybe before both the boys were innocent, this will also be a great moment to show the change in how trauma is affecting these and how they immediately 12 and 16. Perfect. So they're 12 and 16 years old. So I think this is a great moment to show how it affects them because the boys are kind of predominant ish characters as it pertains to Billy. Awesome. And then we get back to the flashback. Ah, poor Nick. Poor Nick. So also as a side note, since before we get to the next Nick part, both of the boys, since they are fully aware of killing, then I want to also understand the extent. Are they about killing people now, or are they just about helping the dad kill people? Are they aware of like the skinning thing? Like, do they know how to skin? Are they cannibals too now in the present moment of the story? Just a couple of things that come to mind. The reason being is because when Miss Summers traps them in the house, then the reason that they probably survive is because of their real awareness of being serial killers. So I think you need to add a little bit more foreshadowing for the boys of the older one understanding what's happening or the younger one because of they're technically in the world of serial killers. Okay, perfect. So you're going to be touching on that in a bit. So I'll reserve that thought then. All right, Billy stands over Miss Summer's body. So let's get to Nick. Oh, poor Nick. Okay, so right now with Billy turning on Nick, this moment I didn't understand the full motivation of the moment. I understood what it needed to achieve, and the fact that he killed Nick is crazy. I was like, Kauffman is forever changed. Oh, so good though. I love these types of scripts. This is definitely a movie that I would watch. Let's see, but with Miss Summers, so I think right now it's not clear. So what do you saw? You didn't do anything but take out another serial killer. Billy, what are you doing? So Billy takes the gun. So Billy is concerned that Miss Summers told him something, that Miss Summers told him something about him. And I don't think that right now that this is a clear enough indicator that Nick knows something. I think you just need to adjust Nick's line and Nick needs to say something maybe about the Dayton Devil or something in general that references that would lead Billy to believe that he knows something. That would then give Billy cause to pull the gun. I think that's what you need to do. What are you sorry for? You didn't do it because right now it's just Nick is just sympathizing with him. Right now, like at this current moment, Billy could have literally just gone away with the whole thing. Billy could have literally just said, "Hey, Miss Summers pulled a knife on me," and they would have been fine. I don't understand why Billy. Oh, I understand if Billy's being paranoid and he thinks Nick knows something, but why pull a gun out him? Why not just ask further questions to get a better understanding? Oh, that's right. That's right. Miss Summers led that. That's right. That's right. Okay, okay, okay. That's right. I remember that now. You did that as setup. That's right. Miss Summers was screwing with him. So But okay, so here's my only challenge to that. So I remember she did that, but based off this interaction with Nick showing up, if Billy thought that Nick was aware of him, why would Nick be treating him kindly in the beginning? Wouldn't Nick already be running down with his gun pointed at him if he knew something? Billy seems like a smart enough individual that if Nick didn't already have his gun out, then Nick probably doesn't know yet. There's some level of disbelief there. So I need to better understand if Billy believes that Nick knows something, why does Billy wouldn't Billy be second guessing of like, what if Nick believes something, why doesn't he just pull the gun on me immediately? So I think that's just something to think about. I think you need to frame it in a way where Nick is saying something that suggests that he knows Billy's past in a way that's accidental. I think that's how you have to frame it right now. But yeah, then him taking this, and then once we get to this moment, him the back and forth is fine. You got to get into the back and forth. Yeah, exactly. And Cornea is another good call out. They're both police. They're both police. So they're going to have a heightened level of awareness as well. And they probably have techniques and strategies for that moment. Awesome. Excellent. Glad to help. Then they have a back and forth with Billy and Nick is good. I swear to God, Billy, she said nothing to me about you. What would she have told me? Billy watches a confused look. Okay. I actually want you to add a moment here before Billy shoots him. I want them to start coming together for a hug or something that's a bonding moment to tie off their character arc before you kill Nick off. Because you have spent a lot of time in the script building this bond between Billy and Nick, I think there should be a final moment where Nick Nick is like, okay, we're good. And then Billy shoots him. I think that would, yeah. I think there should be, or you either have a final bonding moment, or you should have Nick piece together the puzzle in the final moment. I actually think you could go either way. I think this creates more of a surprise because I think you need to tie off their bond because you've spent so much time in the script for Nick and Billy being friends and trying to be closer together. So I think if you have this moment where Nick's like, okay, all right, we're all good, man. And then because you still have to tie off Nick's emotional resolution with his partner because you spent so much time in the script with Nick and the partner. We kind of got that we kind of got that earlier where he found the body and he knows that Miss Summers was responsible, but we have to have Nick's catharsis. Otherwise, we're like, okay, well then why did you spend all that time with Nick and the dead partner? We need to have a resolution to that moment before Billy kills him for that to be worthwhile. And I think you can make both of these work. I think you can weave this conversation of being like, yeah, Nick's like, I found my partner. Nick maybe being in tears and being like, we finally got her. Nick being happy that finally the Miss Summers is dead. His partner's finally avenged. And then Billy pulls the gun out. And I think you could do something like that. Boys about to move fast. Billy raises the gun. And then this is the next moment with Billy pulling it out for the boys. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, the boys are helping. Interesting. Yeah, I forgot how Miss Summers figured it out. But that just could be because we're reading this in sections. Perfect. And then that is the end of this. So once again, Sean, really, really great work. And that's all that I got for you, my friend. I am very excited and very intrigued. I really want to know how this is going to end now. Like Billy has to get caught. I mean, I guess they could get away with it. My guess is that Billy's going to die somehow and that the Sons are now going to have to take over the mantle of the serial killer of the cannibals. So looking forward to seeing the ending, my friend. So eager. You did such a great job with the climax. Absolutely. Awesome. So that was an excellent little reading And with that being said, as we are hitting the 3 hour mark, we are going to call it on the submissions for the day. We have made some great progress and some great comments. If you submitted a story and we haven't gotten to it, it's going to be queued up for the next story and critique show. If you're working on something, submit it now because I get so backed up with a lot of submissions. So the sooner you're sending your submission, the more likely you are to be able to get it read and critiqued on the next critique show. So absolutely send your submission sooner rather than later. Down in the YouTube description is the form. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. So that was really, really fun. Now, as we look towards creative writing on the morrow, you're in luck. I actually finally put together and uploaded the why 97% of writers fail, the highlight video. So I edited and repackaged our stream from that was last Saturday it was a 4 hour stream condensed into about 15 minutes to really focus on the 8 reasons why 97% of writers fail. The link is down in the YouTube video description. Go check it out. Whether you were here in the stream last weekend or if you haven't seen it, there's so much value in it. So definitely worth checking out. Go watch it. And then for tomorrow, the Create Right Now podcast, I'm going to be interviewing and sitting down with Miguel Eichelberger. And he is a leader. He helps leaders. He helps writers and creatives and artists with building up their brands more authentically. So we're going to be chatting about how to be an authentic author brand in 2024 on tomorrow's Create Right Now podcast. We will be at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Come join us. We'll be here right now. All right, beautiful. And most importantly, if you enjoyed the stream, tap that like button. On your way out, smash that like button. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. It's been an absolutely great stream today, my friends. We got some really, really great stories in. Courtney, you're awesome. Glad to have you in here. Eli, when do we hear more about the contest? Ooh, my friend, I am excited and eager to talk more about it. We'll be revealing the details within, let's see, we have to finish some of the prep. We have to finish some of the prep soon. We'll probably start running the ads next week. If I can make sure I have the logistics set, I'll make the announcements on Monday. Monday is always my announcement stream. So I'd say check back on Mondays. Mondays when I like to make big announcements for the channel, and I'll give more details where it's going to be super fun. I'm so excited for it. This is going to be the first time the community we're trying out it's going to be a flash fiction contest. So that way more writers can be involved. So more to come. Great question, my friend. Lmae, glad to have you here. Tiara, this was a really great stream today. Loved having all you here. Loved having all the feedback. Matto, thanks for dropping by the stream. Mass Toaster, glad to have you in here. Ah, man, awesome. And this was great. But it is that time of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.